please call the roll.
All right, Ron.
Present.
Small.
Here.
Howell. Cavell. Smith Charles.
Present.
Lightford. Here. Hoffman.
Present.
Markham.
Here.
Yeah, four.
Thanks. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
You better get driving fast. There are a few of them here.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I thought it was less traffic with the rain today. I don't know if it was
It
anyone
was
else.
bad out there.
Oh, was it bad? Yours is always though. I think yours is always by you because of the road closed.
Yeah. So, before we jump into the budget presentations, I would just like to make note that today is Erin's birthday.
Happy
Anything
birthday.
to work?
21 years old.
Right.
Yeah, so first up today, we have the treasurer's office. We're gonna ask you guys to just go through your presentation and then I'll open it up to the commissioners who I'm sure will have questions. And so welcome, introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, I have all the paperwork in front of me, so I'm gonna try to get through this here, but thank you, Chair Markham and members of the committee and those coming on in right now. Hello, Commissioner Cavell.
He just has to make an entry.
Yes.
That's all there is to it.
And you missed, it's Erin's birthday today as well, so make sure you.
Aaron's birthday. He's blessed with a budget hearing for
Yes, exactly. All you ever wanted for your birthday.
Right.
And I'm also joined by Jody Weister-Defoe, our Chief Deputy, and Jill Robinson, who is our Property Specialist, I think is the title, and also she's the Executive Director of our Land Bank. And also Ashley, who's sitting over there, is our Summer Business Associate, who finishes up this week. She's been here since the middle of May, going to her junior year at U of M. And we love her, and we tried to recruit her to drop out of school to come work with us. But she's gonna do amazing things, and hopefully they'll be here in Oakland County.
Good.
So we're presenting the budget to all of you today. It's fiscal years 24 to 26. That'll be behind me. All right, thank you, Jody. And this is a general fund continuation budget of $9 million, and it provides the necessary resources for our office to deliver statutorily required services. And it also, I'd like to note, absorbs the current costs of the Oakland County Land Bank Authority. We believe our residents deserve access to the highest quality of service from our team. And so some of the duties include, and there's a lot, but these are some of the main ones we wanted to highlight, the collection of delinquent real and personal property taxes on behalf of our 63 CVTs, receiving and dispersing county funds to meet our cash flow requirements, investing of our surplus funds in accordance with our investment policy that you all approved, and then obviously Public Act 20, administering the local government investment pool, and then also with our office, we serve, and I serve as the treasurer for our building, arts, zoo, and public transportation authorities, as well as the Economic Development Corporation and the Business Finance Corporation, and also our retirement system.
Before
We
you go
also-
on, does anybody have any questions about this? I know a couple of people in here are new and
No, this,
And I think
we'll
you
dive
have
in,
this too.
we're gonna dive into some of this
Okay.
as well, and then, so we'll go through it, and then stop me if you have questions, but we'll dive in, and then obviously happy to answer any questions at the end. And then adding to the list of things that we work on in our office, managing the debt portfolio, and helping to support the retention of our AAA bond rating, and then obviously our new organization, the Oakland County Land Bank Authority, and we'll dive into that today as well. We, in our office, continue to monitor the tax collection rates. There was unfortunately a 10.8% increase in delinquent taxes turned over to our office this year. Last year was 61.2 million for 2021 taxes, and then it was 67.8 million for 2022 taxes, although it's not all bad, because it does seem high, but the year before we had a record low for delinquent taxes that were turned over. So this is actually back to kind of historic numbers that we've seen. And we think one of the main reasons that I truly believe is because there were all those safety nets that were put in place during the pandemic that have since expired. So we're back to those normal levels. And with the economic uncertainty, delinquent taxes being turned over to our office might, increase in the future, right? As all of these safety nets were taken out, as we continue to move forward with inflation and certain things. So we monitor that, but we don't see it right away because we're kind of a lagging indicator, right? When people are paying their taxes they're paying them delinquent, they're becoming delinquent, and also like the foreclosure process, right? It's that 3-year process, so we're a lagging indicator. We in our office remain steadfast in our commitment to fulfilling our statutory responsibilities and to assist Oakland County families and businesses to avoid foreclosure. We conducted over 1,200 one-on-one confidential calls with taxpayers to prevent foreclosure, along with we did a really robust media campaign, community outreach, and then we do 4 mailings per year to each parcel that's delinquent and on the path to foreclosure. And then we visit and post every single property before foreclosure. We also worked with all of you who reached out to our shared constituents to prevent foreclosure. We provided that list for all of you in your communities. And because of all of your work, our work, there are fewer than 100 properties going to auction this year. That is the lowest it's ever been.
So just pause for 1 second, just because this is a great graphic that somebody from our communications team put together. At the start of the process, turned over delinquent 44,000, almost 45,000 parcels.
Wow.
And in that this is like a 3-year process, right, as it goes through all these different pieces of the foreclosure process. And we're down to 95 properties.
Wow,
going to
great.
foreclosure.
That is
So that's
great.
the work
That's a
that our
good-
office does.
That's applause, that's good.
So thank you, Jody. And then we're gonna continue to offer the flexible repayment plans that we do. We wanna work with anyone that wants to work with us. If they're willing to reach out to us, we wanna try to help them. And also helping those those people that experience hardships. We have our Financial Empowerment Center in our office. And Rita, who runs up that area, is like a financial coach. So we truly encourage people to reach out to our office and then have those one-on-one conversations with her that she can help them put together a budget, manage their debt, get their credit card debt in order, find grants, resources, things like that. So she does a really, really great job. As we know, and I always talk about, foreclosure impacts not only the person or the family being foreclosed or the business being foreclosed, it impacts the entire community. So that is not our goal. Our goal is to prevent foreclosure. We've also completed settlement and distribution to help cash flow the local communities. And that, that money goes, we administer the DTRF, the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund. So that's, when we go through all 63 communities, that's when we work most closely with them and their local treasurers to cash flow them on their delinquent taxes. And I can go into that process if you want to know a little bit more. A few other things we'd like to highlight. On the Raffaelli settlement for property sold prior to 2020, checks were mailed the first week of August to those who filed claims for their full surplus proceeds amount. Our legal team has nearly finalized the settlements for those who opted out. So there was a few that opted out of that class, and our corporation counsel has been negotiating, and that should be tied up soon as well. There's the new process that I've come to speak to you about multiple times, that new statutory claims process that is in effect, and that's obviously for our 2022 going forward. It requires property taken through right of refusal to be sold at fair market value. So that's, for example, if the state or a local community wants to exercise their right to buy the property that is foreclosed, they now have to pay fair market value. So that's a change in the law. For the 2022 tax foreclosure auction, so that was the auction last year, we received 28 claims. This claims process we talked about, we received 28 claims on 374 foreclosed properties. And 15, and again, it's sent to our office, but it's the circuit court who actually administers this. The circuit court ordered payment on 15 claims, and all of those have been paid. So anything that was sent to our office to send payment has been completed. For this year, for this auction that's upcoming, we have 12 claims so far, not so far, there was the deadline. We had 12 claims submitted on those 95 parcels that we mentioned. So it's actually a higher percentage than it was the previous year. And as we discussed, with all of you, we amended our investment policy in 2022 And as part of that, we have posted on our website an ongoing RFP for investment providers and broker dealers. And this keeps our options of active investment professionals up to date, and it allows us to bid our investment needs to a wide range of experienced firms. And then finally, one thing I want to highlight as we're talking generally here is it's been 5 years since we put out an RFP for our banking services. And so that's going to be going out in the fall. And it's a rather large undertaking for our team to bid out all of our banking services, especially with the integration to Workday. So we will make sure that whoever gets that contract is very familiar with Workday and understands the nuances of all that we do here at Oakland County. Switching gears just a little bit here, we're gonna just talk about the land bank, because we know we're doing kind of our annual report, so you're getting 2 birds, 1 stone here. And let's see, yep, we got the pictures. Don't mind the graffiti, but this is one of the buildings that we actually have some prospects and some things that could be happening. This beautiful building in Pontiac. But October 6th was our first meeting of the land bank, and obviously there were members of the board that were appointed by all of you. We came together to establish our board policies, create a strategic plan, and support community economic development projects. And we'll be able to talk through some of those as well, or answer any questions about those. There's money that comes from the state, grants that are used through land banks. So as you see here, there's a $200,000 blight elimination grant, and that's for houses in the GM Modern, the historic neighborhood in Pontiac. 3 houses, unfortunately 1 was beyond repair and it had to be, and everyone agreed that it had to be demolished. So that's part of the grant, and there's 2 that are being stabilized and will be sold for homeowners to live there.
That's what this rendition is.
Yep,
That's
so
what a
that's-
current property looks like.
Yes.
And that's ideally what it will look like once completed.
Yep. Also, you see over $550,000 blight elimination. This is round 2 grant, and this is going to the old WWJ building in Oak Park on 8 Mile. And this is the Union Joints group that has like Clarkston Union, Fenton Fire Hall, Vincetta Garage, Grand Castor. They have a bunch of different restaurants, and they're the ones that like to take a building that had like one purpose and then was no longer, in use, and then they stay true to whatever it was, but turn it into a restaurant. So this is a really exciting opportunity in Oak Park and for the region. We'll see next slide is the kind of the timeline. I don't need to go through all of this, but in September was when we were created. October was that first meeting, and we had our presentation from the State Land Bank. We met with the Center for Community Progress, and they helped us to put together our guiding policies. We work closely with like our Brownfield team here at the county. I think at one point, we'll talk about or just mention some of the agencies that we work with. But we're getting these grants, and we have some really exciting projects that are in the works right now here in the county. So we're really happy with the progress of the land bank. And one little plug, and maybe Jill would talk about this, but as all these land banks are in place or getting started, the State Land Bank was almost shocked at how efficiently and quickly we got everything done, and they said you guys did a lot better than anyone else has. So we hit the ground running, which is a great thing. So on the next page, all of our partners here within the county, our Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, our Housing Trust Fund, MEDC, MAL, which is the Association of Land Banks, which is separate from the State Land Bank. One is kind of the association for our group. And then these are just some things with the blight elimination program that I mentioned, and there's more opportunities. There's different rounds of funding and it's federal funding that came down to the state that's used for blight elimination. So I just wanted to segue from the other one to that, talk about that, and then I think I covered everything. I try to do it as efficiently as possible in the interest of your time and also to leave time for questions. But that's our presentation for you today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I see Commissioner Hoffman, but I'm gonna go back and first Commissioner Smith Charles.
I want to be before Commissioner Long over there.
Yeah, we had a little competition last week.
Thank you for this. I'd love to dig into the presentation a little bit more later. But one of the things I was hearing about, and I'd love for the treasurer or deputy to speak about, is this thing where folks are letting their water bills, because they're behind on their water bills, their thought process is, hey, I will allow it to go to my tax bill as a lien for, all intents and purposes. Why that's not a good system to use as a homeowner, if you could speak to it's probably more cons than pros, but I do hear that from community members when they're really struggling with that water bill. They're like, I'll just let it go on my taxes.
So a couple things, and I know Jody might chime in as well. Well, first, if they're having those issues, have them reach out ahead of time. I mean, there might be grants available. There are some state grants available. Our office will try to put them in touch, even through if they're a water resource commissioners community. We want to get people help ahead of time, right? Our whole goal is to prevent these kind of things from happening. But I would also, as you said, they're the cons. I mean, you don't want that to roll over, because it rolls over and then it's looks like a delinquent tax on our end. And ultimately, as it's in the process, right, it becomes subject to foreclosure. And so we don't ever want to see someone, and again, we want to work with them, but there's interest and fees that are going to be added that are frankly astronomical, that we have no control over. They are state mandated interest fees that are added that we have no control over. So
And we do hear from people that we're an easy loan, but we are not a cheap loan. We are a very, very expensive, 4% the second it's turned over to the county, and then 1% a year, so 12% that first year, 18% the second year. It adds up very fast, and they're gonna end up paying 2 or 3 times what their water bill was. So it's definitely not a good plan, but I understand when, times are tough, that it is an easy plan.
Does it follow the same 3-year?
It sure does.
Does.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like they
from
could
whenever
be,
it's turned over to us, so based
Right.
on whenever the local turns it over to us.
they could be totally up to date on their property taxes
Correct.
Correct.
and owe $20 on their water bill that gets forwarded to the county. 3 years they sit on that. They could technically.
Well,
So
yes and no, we do have a low balance, so
Yeah, but
if-
one thing, so water, the community can't add it to the tax bill until it's 180 days late. So whatever's 180 days late at the water department or at WRC gets tax certified, which means that amount that's 180 days old gets added to the water bill. That amount is then considered tax, and when it gets turned over to the county, it's not turned over to us saying, hey, this is their water bill, it's, this is their delinquent tax. And so it just starts right on that 3-year process.
Okay,
And
that's
that
very
interest.
clear.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
yeah.
Who's that?
Okay, up next we have Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Rahman, and then Commissioner Hoffman.
I have a couple questions about the DTRF.
Sure.
Okay, so
Look at my budget.
the big thing there is there's a transfer out for fiscal year 2024 of $11.47 million. And so one, can you walk me through that? Because like for example, what is the reasoning behind how much of a general fund?
Sure, so it's a couple pieces, yeah, sure, so it's a couple pieces that make up that transfer. The first thing is, after, I think, 2 years, whatever fees we have collected into the DTRF get transferred into the treasurer's budget as revenue to the treasurer's office. So that is part of that $11 million transfer, so that's usually $2 to $3 million, sometimes 3.5, depending on how the level of tax is.
Fees of,
Fees that are part of the statutory tax foreclosure process, yep,
Okay.
so they get that's one way to fund our office, okay? The second part of that is there is a general fund subsidy from the DTRF that we've agreed to with administration, that it goes right into the general fund, non-discretionary, just a transfer.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is that the DTRF also pays debt service on a few projects, and that's the other piece of that transfer.
okay, why is so for the subsidy here, it says subsidy here, but the transfer to general fund, why is it 5 million instead of 4 million or 6 million?
It's what we've negotiated each year.
So more or less could come out
So yeah, I mean, we look at, there is a resolution that this board passed 20 years ago, I would guess, that says there's a threshold that we're keeping the DTRF level at and that we've shared with the rating agencies. They look very positively about that level of funding in the DTRF. And so that's kind of one of the things we're looking at. We're looking at what we think we're gonna collect, what our expenses are, and so we don't go under that level,
Okay.
that $200 million level. Mhm.
So-
And it's got,
This is not a fund balance, this is just budget. So
Yeah.
yes, we are over the 200 million right now. Yes.
by a lot or not?
Not a lot, I mean, maybe 8 million,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, I noticed in your presentation, right, $20 million in interest comes in, is that just, that goes straight to the general fund? Or is
So
that for other things?
that's for everybody. So that's
Okay.
what's been earned on our whole $1 to
Oh,
$2 billion portfolio. That includes local governments, includes us, includes the road commission, includes everything except the retirement system.
Except retirement, okay,
Correct.
so that $20 million so since it's not for retirement, it goes towards, what's
Each budget, who's at your fund, whatever average fund balance you have that month, you get interest allocated to you on the first of every month.
Okay.
So like I said, if the city of Ferndale has money and the city of Birmingham have balances, they get money allocated to them on the first of every month, as does the treasurer's office, as does water resources. Every fund that has a balance gets allocated interest.
And that's our local government investment pool, and we're one of only 2 counties that operate the LGIP, and that's as a resource to our local communities. So there's 53, so we have 63 CVTs, there's 53 entities, they're not each CVT, that doesn't mean 10 don't participate, there's actually a few more than that, but 53 kind of entities that put their money in our LGIP. So it could be a community has multiple, what they did, like a road bond or whatever it might be, they have money that they invest with us, and then it's liquid, they take it out, it's their money, but we just hold on to it for them, so that's the interest for the whole pool.
Gotcha. Do you collect a margin or a fee or anything like that?
There is an administration fee on it. It's
Okay.
not significant, it's pretty small.
Nominal.
Okay.
And it helps us, right? It helps us here at the county because our pool is so large that we have a little room to have those conversations with financial institutions saying, we can bring this amount of money to you, can you get us a slightly better rate? Which helps us here at the county, right? That means our funds that are invested are getting a slightly better rate as well.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, next we have,
Does that include our ARPA investments? I mean,
Yeah, anything that we have sitting,
Okay.
and until it's, any money that we have that is not being spent in however, right?
It's everything,
Yeah.
everything but retirement.
Thank
I
you.
only let you do that because it was on.
It was on the same, it was on the same.
Until it's
Yeah.
spent.
Did you see me? I was going,
Yeah.
out of order, out of order.
Until any of the money, like when the money is not spent and it's sitting there, right, and we cash flow, right, so we know when we're gonna have to pay payroll and when there's, payments that have to go out. But we have it there, and if there's something coming up soon, it still even makes money because we have like overnight, we invested overnight and make something on it, right? So money is never just sitting there getting nothing.
Okay, next up, Commissioner Roman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation. Thank you. I think it's really great. Your KPIs, your metrics, everything is really phenomenal. I don't have anything as far as the budget. In fact, I think of all the presentations so far, your budget is probably the easiest to kind of see. I mean, line items are all very easy to understand, not much change.
So we,
It could be
You getting used to it.
That's true.
yeah, you're learning more, and also
He's on
just,
his 4th day or how many
And,
hours,
you know?
These are the money people.
Yeah.
I was gonna say next
and
to-
we're of the countywide electeds, we are the smallest department.
Yes, got it. So
So-
maybe that's
Oh,
part of
maybe,
it too.
yeah.
Because the sheriff is $195 million.
I thought of you, Charlie.
And also again, we didn't, like, we have, as I said at the very
Next time
beginning,
you
we
say,
have,
where's the money?
we haven't increased, other than like fiscal for insurance, and what was the other thing?
Staff salaries.
Staff salary, things that went up, but like we have not asked for an increase in anything in our office in the last 2 budget cycles.
Got it. Okay, so I have 2 questions for you, unrelated to specifically the budget itself. One was, it's a staff question we were working through here. Recent United States Supreme Court decision, Tyler versus Hennepin County, Minnesota, are you familiar? And does it have any effect on our property tax foreclosure process?
So it doesn't impact us currently because we changed the law. So when I was a legislator, we actually changed law. So it is similar to the Raffaelli case that you know started here in Oakland County. There is now a mechanism for people to claim their, you know, the surplus. If their property was sold for a surplus, they were foreclosed, they owed their interest, fees, whatever was added, the minimum bid. So before it was just kept, and that was state statute. And now there's a mechanism in place, which is exactly what I talked about, that claims process where they submit those claims. They're able to do that now. So what you heard of with those, like with Hennepin, we have already changed the law here in Michigan, and based on, you know, talking to our outside counsel, to our corporation counsel, they all said Michigan is doing it right, and we are actually a model for other states to now follow, because we were, you know, we reacted relatively quickly after this case made it to the Supreme, actually once the Supreme Court ruled on this.
The other thing I was, Raffaelli was decided under the Michigan state constitution by the Michigan Supreme Court, and this decision was a federal constitution at the federal Supreme Court, so it's really a very, very similar decision. And it was, yeah, we kind of expected it.
Got it, perfect, thank you. Okay, and then my other quick question is, everything is pretty straightforward in your budget. Is there anything you cut out or anything you would like to see if you had the ability to add something into your budget?
There's nothing we cut out. As I said, this is in essence a continuation. I would say there's nothing that we're like, you know, we would have had those conversations to start asking. I mean, I think our Financial Empowerment Center is a really important program. I know down the road we had talked about, so currently there's the MyHalf program that we've talked about, the Michigan Homeowners Assistance Fund, that is gonna run out of money at some point. I would love to see some kind of, you know, relief program here at the county, if that's, you know, if we have the funds available. I can't think of anything currently. I don't know if your thoughts.
We would have asked.
Yes. So, but those are things just to be mindful of moving forward.
Sure.
You know, as the funds dry out at the, you know, the state
All
for
the
the
ARPA
MyHalf.
funds, right?
All the ARPA
CARES
funds,
Act,
right?
yeah.
CARES, yeah, all the money that came over, and that's the MyHalf, right? The MyHalf program is federal CARES Act dollars sent to states. MISTA administers the plan here. We've had over $5 million go to Oakland County residents from this program. So, you know, I think it's a really good program to help stabilize neighborhoods and help people that are in trouble. And so I think that would be something we would love to kind of look at that once the funds are no longer available. So, but not now, it's still there, so.
Yeah, okay,
But thank you for that question.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's it, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next up, I have Commissioner Hoffman, followed by Commissioner Long.
Right, thank you. One point about the water, and I don't know if people realize that, but they're also earning a penalty from whoever provides that water
Right.
too,
Yeah.
late fees and everything.
Absolutely.
That's right.
But I suggest too, and I've heard of this, where eventually when it's put on your taxes, those people who pay, you know, then they eventually pay their taxes and they file long form. I suspect they're probably deducting that because it looks like a tax, so.
But, you know, I
But there's
would-
no real gain there.
Yeah.
They're
I
not
would
ahead of
guess
the game.
that the amount you get to write off is not, you know, you're paying a lot, not worth
And
paying.
you're still paying more and it's not
Paying-
worth it.
Yeah, correct.
Secondly, you spoke of an abatement grant of like $500,000 for abatement in different communities.
This is in the land bank.
Like,
Yep.
oh, okay, so it's property that's owned by the land bank and you manage that and contract with people to do the abatement, is that how it works?
Not necessarily, it can be a privately owned building, the WWJ building for the round two is privately owned. So we enter into a contract with them and there's a lien placed on it, for the money that is spent on it, it's a 7-year lien.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, and the last thing is, you mentioned that some people opt out of the class action lawsuit and it said corporate counsel's negotiating with them. It just seems to me that these people were screwed by an unconstitutional law, that they should be just made whole. What's to negotiate? If you took $10,000 of my equity, they should be written a check for $10,000. And what do you negotiate for?
With all those, they had attorneys, and so like the attorney's fees are kind of the main sticking point in the negotiation. But otherwise, they're getting
They are getting 100%.
they're getting 100%, right?
And everybody in the class received 100% as well.
In the class they received?
Yeah.
And these
And
people
they
are
opted out
also,
because they're higher, most of them are higher value, and they thought they might not get 100% if they stayed in the class. But in essence, they would have also got 100% if they just stayed in the class, but
and
their
could have
attorneys
saved
wouldn't have been
attorney,
paid.
yeah, that's right, they could have saved on attorney fees, so.
Okay, but those people that were in the class and they settled and got 100%, but out of that, do they have to pay their attorney fees?
They don't have attorney fees.
Oh, they won't have
No.
attorney fees on the class action?
Correct. They received a mailing from us, they responded to that mailing, and it's taken a little time to, settle everything, but then they're getting a check, so they have no attorneys.
And
But
unfortunately,
those are the ones outside of the class.
no, that's the class.
Oh, they're in
That's
the
the
class.
class
The ones
process.
outside of the class are ones with attorneys.
Who filed separate lawsuits.
Correct. And unfortunately, again, I'm with you, these people should have been made whole, and they're being made whole, right? But there are some, and I'll be careful because I'm on the record here, but there are some attorneys that have kind of ulterior motives that are doing this around the state and trying to find anyone and everyone saying, we're gonna help you get this money, even though they could have got this money on their own. And the attorneys are taking a percentage, and there's nothing we can do about that. If they bring out an attorney, these attorneys are entitled to whatever their fee is, whatever they negotiate, whatever their fee is. So unfortunately, those that opt out of the class will not get 100%. The payment is 100%, but they won't get 100% because their attorneys are gonna get 100%.
Attorneys, right.
Correct.
Okay, because when this first came down, are you saying that everybody, when the Supreme Court finally ruled, all those people got 100% because there were cases?
If they filed a claim.
If they had to file a claim. And we reached out to every single, as part of this, right, anyone that lost their property during that window was reached out to multiple times and letters sent and, everything we could do to try to track them down.
Okay, how big was that window? Did they go back to like '09?
Yep,
Okay,
2009 to 2019.
because I think the county settled with some people 50-60%.
Well, that was lawyers, so
That
that
was
was a legal
attorneys.
negotiation.
I'd get another lawyer.
We no
One
comment,
that could read the Constitution.
no comment on that.
Oh my God. Okay,
But-
thank you
Yeah,
very much. Thank you
That's
for
who
what
makes
you
the
do
money.
with
yeah.
helping these people. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Who's lawyers?
These lawyers.
And I'm not trying to denigrate lawyers, there's,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are a few, like anything, there's a few bad apples.
Search for
And there's a
those
few
people.
bad apples that
Search for
are,
those people.
there's some of these lawyers that are actually being sanctioned in the state. They are being sanctioned for what they've
Oh.
been doing,
They should be.
yeah.
Interesting.
That's quick.
Is that it, Commissioner Hoffman?
Oh, yes, I'm all done. Thank you,
Okay.
if you can believe that.
You might be back, I don't know. Okay, up
See a
next
light bulb
is
pop.
Commissioner Long.
So mine is maybe for budget over there on page 305. The professional service line item is 926,000 actual in 2022, and then it goes down to 29,000. It's not in the small book, but was that due to the Raphael case? You know?
What, at 305?
Yeah, and then it's line item, it's about 6 down, professional services, it was 926 actual in 2022. Was that the Raphael? And then we're going down to
Yeah, that
professional
would have been
service?
legal fees, yes,
Okay,
yes, that
and then
would
we're
have
going
been
to
legal fees.
29,000 from here.
Correct.
And it wasn't in this, cause sometimes I looked, had to do my handy dandy little
Yeah.
book, but it wasn't in there explaining,
That
but
would have been
that,
some of those early claims that,
okay, cause I know we've been working on it for a long time, so.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
perfect, that was my only question, thank you.
Anything to add, you're good.
No, that was
That's
just.
good, see, look at
It's
my.
Wasn't big enough,
Yeah.
because we had $39 million in control.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay, thank you, but see, we're saving there too, getting
Yeah.
into this case, so that's
Yeah,
good.
that's good.
Alright, thank you.
I had the same question.
Good minds think alike, is that what they say?
Right, anybody, let's see, I have Commissioner Cavell for a second time. Commissioner Wyper, did you have any questions before I went to Commissioner Cavell?
Second.
I was gonna ask about the expanded investment policy, or RFP for advisors, so how's that gonna?
So
you think
it's
that's gonna be?
It's open and it's kind of like a rolling, right? So it's on our website, so any broker dealers, anyone, to help us in our investment portfolio, with our investment portfolio, we put together a application for them. And then they are then one of our approved vendors, if you will, that we can go to when we are looking to buy or sell securities.
So we still bid out every security, it rolls through who we use. is the process.
But you have to be approved for us, we're not just sending it out to the world and anyone, right? They have to show that they know.
They have their license,
Yeah,
they've done
exactly.
this work for a
And they
while.
understand Public Act 20, which is our, kind of guidelines from the state. Our own investment, they have to sign a copy of our investment policy saying they will abide by our investment policy. So this is so that, right, we have these, and we have a list, I don't know what our number is now, Paul, who's our investment administrator, would have that, but a lot of the entities that we were working with before, and we've even expanded, so.
Yeah, I would say we were at 5 and we're probably at 15 now, so.
And then just for everybody, on advancing monies to our CBTs for the taxes. Can you tell everybody how that works? And that's the fact that we have this money, we can do that.
Yeah, so that's that delinquent tax revolving fund, that's our DTRF. And there are other places, and because we keep that $200 million threshold, the minimum threshold, that we don't have to, because there's delinquent DTANs, delinquent tax anticipation notes, that a lot of other counties have to because they don't have the funds that we do. Thankfully, they borrow, we don't. So what happens is, for, let's say Novi, for example, Novi, right, if I don't know, 1,000 people don't pay their taxes and it's $10 million worth of taxes, imagine Novi trying to operate, year in and year out if they have these taxes that aren't coming in. And this is the process through the state, all counties do this. We cash flow them, in essence, we give them 100% of what's owed. They get $10 million delinquent, we give them $10 million, we become the collections agent on that money, and then that's the first year, right? That's the first year of the foreclosure process, is they had that first year to pay. It comes over to us after the first year. They have another 2 years. But that's what we do with our CBTs, is we cash flow the CBTs with that DTRF fund. So we make sure that they have the cash they need to operate, with their budget. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's when we work most closely, our office works most closely with the local communities, because people always assume that we have oversight over them or we're an authority.
Right.
We're not, right? They are separate. But that's when we work closely with them, because we have to verify their numbers, and then make sure they get payment.
Give it a run
On that,
Yeah, just related to that, so how and when, so let's say you front load, you give Novi $10 million to cover the obligation. How and when does that money come back to you?
As we collect it, so
So let's say you get half of it, the other half you just,
Then we tax foreclose.
that's the foreclosure. That's when the foreclosure happens, right? So, and that's why the DTRF has money in it, is because there's those interests and fees that are mandated by the state. So we are collecting that as part of it. So that's where, and then ultimately, if we don't collect, then we foreclose and hope to sell it at an auction, and if it's sold at an auction, then now there's surplus that goes to the former owner, but we're made whole, right? That's how we make ourselves whole. Ultimately, if it doesn't sell at an auction, the first auction or the second auction, we can actually charge back the local community.
So then we go back to the local and say, look, we loaned you this money 3 years ago. We haven't been able to collect it either from the taxpayer, any other interested parties, or at a sale. You now have to pay us back that money.
and how often do you find that to be the case?
Rare.
It depends on the community. Some communities have had larger chargebacks than others, but it's gotten to the point now that it's pretty rare. It happens, but the numbers are much lower than they used to be.
So you're never really left holding the bag then?
We are not.
Under state law, the DTRF is not allowed to be. It has to be. It's 100% funded.
Thank you.
okay, and I think we're due to finish at 1:45, so Commissioner Cavell, you can take us home with your question.
Well, you just talked about the MyHave program. I was just, in your PowerPoint, it said that was how 273 households were not included on the foreclosure list.
And there's more than that now.
So-
That number goes up.
So that sounds like a big deal, cause we would have had over 300, I'm not good at math, but we would have had 300 more foreclosures that we now don't have because of this state funded program that will run out, that thanks to your question, Robert and Jody and Jill will need money for in a few years. When does the MyHave program end?
So whenever it runs out of money, but by 2026 at the latest, right? I mean, it's just like ARPA dollars. So by the end of 2026 at the latest, unless they spend it down prior to then. And they have spent, I mean, I think Wayne County's got close to 30 million or something out of that. And again, we're only about 5 million.
And I think it's also important, the MyHave program isn't just taxes. It also can help if you're behind on your mortgage, behind on your utilities, condo fees, homeowners association fees, internet. Like, it's much more expanded than Step Forward was, which was the prior program in the early 2010s.
So is the 4.8 right there, was that for 1 year or is that over
That's
the
since
course of
it's-
3 years?
Since it was created. So my half opened last year.
21,
21? No, you're right, it was
21.
open in the fall of 21, so about 2 years.
22.
and so, but it was like 22 taxes when we started to see that come in.
So it's 2 years of taxes then? Or is it 1 year?
I mean, they will pay, so when the program first opened, they would pay back to your 2019 taxes. So they would pay your, whatever you had due, 2019, 20, 21, 22.
Okay.
And then so unfortunately, there are some people that have older years than that, still owe us 17 and 18. So they were leaving this like gap. And county treasurers went back to them and said, look, you're not preventing the foreclosure if you don't pay all the taxes off. And so then they did another review of all of the property tax foreclosures and paid off those older years as well, which is
At a cap of $25,000. So in essence, this is a
household.
great idea per household, but this is a good idea because they said, okay, we paid your 19, 20, 21s and it was $18,000. You still owe, $7,000 prior. Why don't you just, right? So that you stop the foreclosure, right? Because each year is independent of the other year with the foreclosure process, right? So you could pay your 22s and 23 taxes, but owe your 2020s and get foreclosed, right? So
So then, just spitballing here, but then that $5 million general fund subsidy that comes to us from them, if it was $6 million, or if we made that 6 million, right, they agree to make it 6 million, and you do that for a couple of years, then you could have a pot of money, right, 24, 5, 6, so you could have $3 million set aside to start our own Oakland County MyHalf program by the time this one falls apart, or ends in 27. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. But when that ends in 27, we could have $3 or $4 million, and we already got the money. They have the DTRF that's already funded.
Okay, well, let's
Right.
take that idea
Okay.
offline.
Just saying.
yeah, not today.
Because he's warning us, that's what he's because thanks to Aji's question though, Robert's warning us that it's gonna get worse.
So thank you for
Okay.
planting that seed.
They're looking out. Okay.
Can you send us information on that
And
MyHalf, please?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thank you.
So how does a
Sure.
property, this is my last question, how does a property end up in the land bank?
So, and Jill can talk more about this, but ultimately it's a decision of the land bank and the land bank board, right? So like we have our surplus property. We were, and I've talked about this before, we were operating a quasi land bank in our office. So those properties that didn't sell at auction, they would, and the local communities didn't want them, then we would maintain those properties and oversee those properties. So right now, we don't have, I mean, we have only a few properties that we have decided to move into the land bank.
Yeah, I
Right,
think
but
we're-
otherwise-
Yeah, we're more project specific right now because we don't have a budget, right? So we have in the treasurer's office, we have a maintenance budget to take care of the 400 properties that we currently own. So right now, we moved 2 houses into the land bank for the renovation. We are going to potentially move a building in Farmington into the land bank, so they qualify for brownfield reimbursement. So it's very project focused, so we don't wanna inundate the land bank with no budget with a bunch of properties to take care of. We're being very careful and strategic about how we use this more as an economic development tool for housing, working with the Housing Trust Fund, trying to figure out the best place to use the land bank where there is funding available.
Great,
Real
real quick then.
Really quick, well, how many properties are in the land bank right now?
2.
Oh, that's it, okay,
And
Commissioner
then
Hoffman?
400 in our office, like our surplus.
right, from before.
So, yeah.
Robert, you made a point about a person could pay their 22 or 23 taxes, but not have paid their 19 or 2020 taxes, and they get foreclosed on,
Could be.
which
It is not-
could be, and
yeah.
I'm sure it's happened. But when you collect tax money, like when you.
The oldest year, I know you're gonna say the oldest year.
You pay the oldest balance first, that's.
So there are some people that don't want to, and we make them sign an agreement or something that says, although I have these taxes and these taxes are subject to foreclosure, I still wanna pay whatever, whatever the more current ones. So don't
I
look
don't
it up.
understand that.
Why would you do that?
Right.
Well, cause some people wanna avoid certain fees preemptively from happening, right? Cause the fees on this one are already starting to accrue. We wouldn't recommend it, that's why we have them sign a waiver, and this is something that all counties do.
Still building up, so it doesn't make sense.
But I mean, technically, they can pay on whatever tax year they wanna pay on, But we just make sure they are aware that you are still.
Standard
Growing,
office
yeah.
policy is pay the oldest first.
Yeah, pay
Yeah.
the oldest
Pay the
balance
oldest
first on
first.
everything.
The most
They're gonna be
expensive
making
ones,
the
pay the
interest
oldest
and the
first.
pay-
County.
fees are gonna be a
How many times does that happen? You know, where somebody doesn't pay up losing their property, but they're.
taxes.
Oh,
I
that's.
mean, we try,
that's
when we
fair.
review the properties, we hold that off and we try to reach them another way, like there's something going on,
I know
right? Like
you
what's
do, and
going on?
We do that and we visit, like that's a lot of the properties that we actually visit, when we go visit, like Jody and I will look through it and we'll say, there's something going on here, why would they pay their newer ones and not the old one? They probably didn't know, or there was something, or there was a
Or
transfer of ownership.
Right, a sale and the title company was supposed to pay it, but the owner.
Yeah,
you know,
Those are things that we will
happens
withhold until we have more information.
I
We
appreciate it.
do, and that's why our numbers are so low, is that we do a file review, we look at every single property before it's foreclosed,
Good,
so.
thanks.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming in.
Good
They helped
presentation.
us with our AAA bond
Yes.
rating and
And we will submit to the board a formal annual report on the land bank for everyone.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
always forget what's in it.
Thank you.
There's only
Thank you for this
two.
discussion, this was nice.
There's more property.
Thank you.
And this was, hopefully, as you said, Commissioner Rahman, it was easier for you guys with us, we're happy to hear that.
He's just getting so smart with these budgets, so too.
Or he says that to everyone that comes in here, and I just missed that.
You do have the other county-wides coming in after this.
all right.
They're doing it.
We're supposed to start with the prosecutor in a minute. Are they here?
Wait, she's been at fiscal.
I think that's ridiculous. I think it's disrespectful. Someone should come to the office.
It's once a year. You said it was okay for her to do it by via.
I just think everyone else has been in person. I mean, not even her, but there's a name here. Who's your next person down the line then or something. I mean, I personally like the
Yeah,
head
she
of the
took us through the
department, but
first.
Right.
Well, they have the opportunity to pick a time that works for them, right? Once a year, yeah.
see 'em, you know.
I'm bummed out now.
Thank you all.
Yeah, are they, thank you.
Thank you.
See, Charlie, 5-minute break here? Charlie and Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait for Commissioner Martin.
Freezing.
You guys have it?
Yeah.
He was asking, are we doing 5-minute
I
break?
want like
Yeah, we'll do a
10
5-minute
tougher
break.
questions for this next presenter.
Are you putting your question on already? I've already got my request.
They were listening and
I'll send you an email.
Oh, I didn't have permits in that last thing we had.
Alright.
You don't wanna do anything, don't do anything.
But I'll definitely email you.
Thanks.
Alright, everybody, well, we're gonna start on our second budget hearing for this afternoon. We're meeting with the prosecuting attorney and her staff. So welcome, and we'd like you to introduce yourselves and give us your presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions from the
Great.
floor.
I'm Karen McDonald, I'm the Oakland County Prosecutor.
And I'm David Williams, I'm the Chief Assistant Prosecutor.
Hi, I'm Betsy Haig, I'm the Chief of Administration.
And last but not least, Justin Davis, Chief of Policy and Training.
So this makes up pretty much our top leadership team. David is second, sort of runs the office and does a lot of things that I couldn't possibly do. And Betsy deals mostly with you all folks, like this is like her and all of the administrating that it takes, and then Justin focuses on training and policy, so. So as you know, I think this is this my third time doing this or my second? Third. I like to, what's that?
That was fast already, 3 times already,
Yeah.
you know?
Flies.
Yeah, right. I
And we
like,
haven't had anything to do in
Yeah, I was gonna
between, so
say, right.
it's been
No,
nice
yeah.
smooth
Right.
sailing,
Yeah.
right?
I do though, just for some context with the Oxford prosecution, we are in the middle of the Miller hearing where we're asking the court to sentence him to life without parole, even though he's a juvenile, even though in general, I disfavor life without parole sentences for juveniles. This of course is an egregious rare exception. So we are thick in the middle of it. I'm personally involved in that, and we are going back on Friday to for our rebuttal witness and then my closing. So definitely in it. And then the parents' case is still with the Supreme Court. And we expect a decision. We can't expect a decision because unlike other bodies, they have absolutely no time frame or requirement where they can leave or deny or accept leave. So hoping that we'll have a trial date on the parents soon, but it's unclear. But the reason I'm here, even though, as you know, there's a lot going on, is I really have made it a goal to be very transparent and get to know the commission and find out what your needs are, what your concerns are, and be as accessible as possible. And I think that is important for a lot of reasons, but it's also important because that wasn't done for 12 years before I got here. And we're not enemies, and most of the time, regardless of what letter's after your name, most of us agree on most things. So I'm here because I feel responsible for letting you know why and what we're requesting and where that came from. So the case and evidence management system, and I've talked about this before, we are light years behind any other prosecutor's office in the state. We fashioned what we call the Q drive. IT has literally they've lost years of their life because it wasn't really meant to be a case management system, but we're doing the best we can. And I did that last year actually it was a year ago, it was on my birthday, it was July 11. I basically said if we have even the slightest context or infrastructure to just do what we can right now, we're gonna do it because we're hurting victims and we're really there's just an obstacle to fair and just prosecution when you have paper files that get lost or destroyed or damaged and we don't even know where they are. And the context of that was when new prosecutors come in, you can't see every single thing they are doing after they're trained, but what you do have is their dockets and their files, and then telling us whether or not a case was dismissed, or whether they won a trial or not, or whether a felony was bound over. Those are their outcomes, right? Well, what was happening, because it was all paper, is there were a couple that were problems and they just weren't turning in their files. And there was no way of checking it at all. And so by the time that got to our radar and my radar, you know, once you start digging, just piles of cases where the case was dismissed in a district court for lots of them domestic violence because the victim did not show up. Well, as you know, that's very common, and we have alternate proofs that we can proceed on. There's a lot of things, and I'm not saying this happens all the time, but what I'm saying is, in order for me to know what's going on in the office, we need transparency, and we need to be able to put our hands on a file, and that just wasn't happening. Just even getting a file, someone calls me about a file. Maybe it's a judge, maybe it's an attorney, maybe it's one of you. Can you look into this? This is what happened before July 11th last year. Kate, can you call down to case records and see if you can get the file? If I'm lucky, I might have my hands on it by the end of the day, but usually that's not the case. They have to track it down. It might be in someone's car, it might be in someone's house, it might be at some, place where we store older files, it might be in someone's desk or office. And within that paper file are like actual pieces of evidence. And for the most part, all law enforcement is digital, but some of it isn't. And if it's gone, there's no way to proceed with the prosecution. So it got to the point where I said, we're doing it. I know it's not perfect. We don't have a case management system. We don't have CarPal, but we put it together, and it's been somewhat of a headache because we're outgrowing the capacity, and David can tell you, like, it's not doable from that perspective. So thankfully, the county executive has recommended that we get the funds for a case and evidence management system. And again, I just want what everyone else in the county has. It really, I still cannot believe the prosecutor's office compared to what the courts are like, because I was a judge, or in other offices, what the digital capacity that we just don't have. And one could argue we probably need it more than the court does, because it's our job to prosecute people. So I'm happy to take questions now on this piece, or wait till the end, but that has been recommended. I think it was partially IT saying, like, listen, you gotta give this to them because we can't do this anymore with them.
I mean, just briefly, so they set up a site for us and they said we had unlimited storage, as much as we'll ever need, we can always add to it, no problem. And within 3 months, they said, you've used up 25 terabytes of space. It turns out each site is limited to 25 terabytes. You're filling it up now at a rate of 25 terabytes quarterly, 100 terabytes a year. You're going to cost the county a lot of money if you don't do this a different way. So they're in full support, and that's part of how we got in the budget.
So what's your timeline then to get this all in and implemented?
So we have a go live date with a company called CarPal, and we got that date through PAM, the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan. They've decided statewide to adopt this in every county where they can get the funding. And so we have a go live date of April 2024.
And CarPal there are functions that you'll be surprised we don't have the ability to do, which is type in somebody's name and automatically know all the files we have on that one person. Type in a victim's name and automatically know if that person's also a defendant or a victim on another case. CarPal also generates subpoenas. CarPal sends emails to witnesses and victims and defendants and notifies people of changes. So it's really going to be a game changer in terms of how we prosecute and how with the ease. And that really leads me into the next topic, because what I want is lawyers to do lawyer work. 20 years ago when I was at the office, I was an assistant prosecutor, and I worked for Dave Gorska. And you were lucky to have a job, and nobody cared what you thought, and nobody cared about respecting you in the workplace because there's 20 people behind you that'll take your job, so out the door if you don't like it, right? That's not the case anymore. It's not the case for any industry. All of us need to work harder to keep employees, and we need to care about culture. And one of the things that they're still doing in my office is giving clerical and support staff work to lawyers. So I have prosecutors who are here at 11 o'clock at night putting exhibits into binders and copying. I have prosecutors spending hours filling out subpoenas Those do not take any skill, it doesn't take a lawyer to do that. Putting together presentations like a PowerPoint, but it has nothing to do with the substance of the presentation. We are putting that on the backs of lawyers, and that first of all, it doesn't make any sense from a cost benefit standpoint. Why would we pay people over $100,000 a year to spend half of their time copying exhibits or sending out subpoenas or sending out discovery? That discovery, which is the packet of information all defendants have a right to. That doesn't make any sense. And it also doesn't bode well for keeping employees, because if you can go to another firm or a private practice and make about the same but not spend time copying, that's what you're gonna do. When I got here, we had prosecutors sometimes that would take 8 hours to just upload videos for an exam in district court the next day. It's unsustainable. I wouldn't keep that. I would not keep staying in that job if I had it. It just doesn't make sense. So what I've really tried to do is say, okay, let's shift clerical work to non-lawyers. Because first of all, they cost less money. And second of all, then my lawyers can do the things that we want to do and the things that we have done, but the things we still have yet to do. For instance, we have a pre-hearing or pre-trial working group that is addressing bail and pre-trial supervision. Well, I'm gonna need a lawyer to attend arraignments. I'm gonna need lawyers to move forward on our restorative justice that Commissioner Cavell just mentioned. And we're working on that, and we have working groups, but I don't have time, I don't have resources to have lawyers do that work, because they are so much of their jobs right now in many of the divisions is truly copying, putting into, sending things out. It doesn't make any sense. And so what I have asked for that the executive has not recommended, and I'm here to really tell you why that's not the right move, is paralegals. We can pay paralegals significantly less. They have the expertise to even draft pleadings sometimes that are just more generic in form. Send out subpoenas, send discovery out to lawyers. They can put together exhibit lists. They can help prepare so that the lawyer is actually preparing for their docket or their case. And while I understand that they don't like funding, and I get it, this is your job. Nobody likes signing on for positions because it's a long-term thing. But the single biggest cost in our office is personnel. And do you know how much money we waste by training somebody and then 4 months later they leave? And I would love to tell you that's not happening, but it is happening. The load is too much, particularly on the entry level when we send prosecutors to district court where the misdemeanors are tried and the felonies have their first preliminary exam, probable cause hearing. Those are usually newer lawyers, and the load there's no paralegal in my district court, not one. So I have 2 secretaries who barely manage to keep up on scanning the mail and sending out some subpoenas. And I've taken case records people and diverted them to helping with sending out discovery. I have a litigation support unit now. All they do all day long is take digital discovery, upload it, and get it to a form where we can, as our duty under the Constitution, provide what we have to the defense attorneys in a timely manner. This takes a huge amount of time. We now have all of the law enforcement basically has body-worn camera. If just for reference, and you probably know this, but we don't just get a body-worn camera of the traffic stop. What we get is about 12 hours of a body-worn camera for that deputy or officer during his shift. And we have to go through it, we have to find what we need, then we have to redact to make sure nobody's on those tapes or those videos that we don't want a defendant to know, and it takes a long time. Do you wanna pay $130,000 a year for a lawyer to do that? Because I don't, and I'm a taxpayer, I do not. That makes absolutely no sense. So we need more clerical positions like paralegals to shoulder some of that. And by the way, I mean, it's just when we think we have a workaround and we've got it under control, more digital evidence is available in law enforcement. I mean, massive amounts of social media and everybody has, Ring camera footage, like it's at the point now, a phone, I mean, they're doing phone dumps on some juvenile investigations for assault and battery. Like, it's a lot, but there has been a push to resource the sheriff's office. And because he's really good at doing that, and I'm just getting started, but you can resource him all you want. But if we don't have lawyers to do anything with all of that digital evidence, then it doesn't make any sense. We need resources, and I don't think anybody would argue that should be a lawyer. And it's more cost effective to have a paralegal, and in addition, it's better for culture. Because people didn't go to law school and rack up $100,000 in student loans so they could go and spend from 8 to 10 at night copying things so they could be ready for their docket the next day. That is not, and also, I've got people and places and firms, like, they can hire somebody for the same amount or more, and they don't have to do that. Now, this structure was definitely already in place. I come from private practice. I worked for one of the largest law firm in Oakland County. So did David. This was very well recognized in a private practice setting because ultimately they're for profit. So they want to make money. And so they're not gonna pay lawyers to do something they can pay a paralegal to do. So that immediately that's our background. But not just that, and I think one of the slides, I don't know what slide we're on now, but there is also in the public sector and the Department of Justice, they have 6 paralegal, they have 6 lawyers to 1 paralegal. In private firms, it's 3 to 1. Obviously, we're not in that. We're asking for 8 to 1. Currently, what is it, Betsy? 15 lawyers to 1 paralegal. And there's another way of saying that. It means like 14 lawyers have no paralegal. I mean, or at least 13, because there's just not the capacity, right? So I'm asking you to look at the recommendations, but also hear what I have to say, because I just don't think you can make a case economically why you wouldn't add paralegal positions. And sure, you can say, well, we're not doing either. We're not giving you more lawyers and we're not giving you, but you're also gonna pay a lot more money for me to train people over and over and over again.
So I'm gonna stop you there and let Commissioner Rowland ask his question, because he's been teed up for a few minutes here.
Sure, no, I appreciate it. I don't know, do you have a lot more that you have to present or?
No.
Okay, because I didn't want to cut you off. Well,
I actually hardly have anything to present. I was just going to make the final push and say that this is in line also with one of the strategic goals of the county, which of course is public safety, fairness in the criminal justice system. So I don't wanna forget that this is the county executive's pillars, and I'm just trying to do what he feels is important. So yes, go ahead.
Oh, perfect, thank you. First off, thank you for the information. Being new to the commission, this is all brand new to me. And I guess, as an outsider sort of looking in, I come from the medical world, right? So for me, EMR has been the gold standard for a couple of decades, right? I can only imagine in the legal world, it would mirror or parallel kind of what I'm used to on the medical side of things. So the fact that this is all paper system and the fact that records get lost just
By the way,
blows-
you know what we
blows my-
do with, Doctor, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you know what we do with medical records that we need desperate, many of our cases involve medical records? We print them.
Yeah, this is
They
unheard
were
of.
printed and stuck in paper files.
Yeah, you won't even find a medical practice anymore
I
that
know.
does this. So I can't imagine on the legal side. I guess my question, and this is more of a rhetorical question, because again, I'm only 6 months into this job. How did this hot mess continue for as long as it did? Was there any oversight to this point? Because I frankly, I just don't understand how we got here.
Prior.
Well.
It's no, it's
my
never.
God, that
And that may be a
No.
whole conversation for another
No.
time, so I don't need to open up a can of worms, but
Okay, so I can do the 1
It was
to 2
your
minute
prior,
version.
her prior person.
When I worked there 20 years ago. Jessica Cooper served as a prosecutor for 12 years. She was my predecessor. And
She was a mess.
she was a Democrat, by the way. She didn't want anyone in the office. she didn't,
Let anyone in.
there's a training fund we could use that we desperately need because that's another whole topic. My training budget's like $7,000 or something. What'd you say?
3,000.
My training budget is $3,000. Are you guys happy with that? Because if you are a victim of a crime or you have a loved one prosecuted, don't you really want your prosecutors to be trained? I have $3,000. So we use this net fund. But she wouldn't even use that because she didn't like to come in front of the commissioners. When I walked in after I won the election, the paint on the walls and the carpet was still the original when the building was built over 20 years ago. There were VHS players, the phones were yellow, the screens are like this. There was no capital improvement at all. So I remember Commissioner Hoffman came over and Commissioner Spiz, and I said, look, I just want you to show it. And I showed them. I wasn't even there to talk about that we don't have digital. I really wanted, because I was asking the commission to say, hey, we really need modern, you can't make people go to work with like stained carpet and all that. So they came to see, and I remember Spiz saw the file room. And he said, what is all this? And I said, these are our files. There's no, he's like, what if something happens? What if there's a disaster? I'm like.
Well, the fact that evidence, like you said, is paper can get lost or whatever the case is. So I don't wanna take up too much time, but I guess my quick questions on a very high level is what is it going to take to get from where we are to where we need to be in terms of dollars and cents, right? Do we have somebody other than yourself, who I assume is eyeball deep in doing the legal thing, right? Do we have somebody at a 40,000-foot view who can look at this entire mess and say, look, this is what we need in terms of hiring paralegals, what our attorneys need to be trained to do, and just sort of put the house in order, I guess.
I think you're describing what I'm doing. And my expertise comes from being in the private practice world and being a shareholder for 10 years and then as a judge and just being able, I very much run the office more like as a CEO than traditionally the elected did. Just because I have big things that you all want me to accomplish, and culture eats policy for breakfast. And if we don't get people that wanna be there, and if we don't recognize and respect people in the workplace and treat them like professionals and give them phones that were made, you know, in the 20th century.
Recently.
Yeah, and the same sort of digital aids that every other lawyer, then we're not gonna be able to keep them, and we're certainly not gonna be able to do what we wanna get done. So slowly, I mean, this board has been tremendous in supporting me, not just on that front, but also, you know, when Oxford occurred, it was the world tipped upside down. Our needs were different. It was something that none of us expected, and we needed a lot of support and help, and you all were here, and I am so grateful for that.
But I guess my question is phrased another way. Do you have a dollar amount that would basically turn this from where we are to where we need to be?
What, that's what, 60,000?
So one of the things that we've really focused on, this is a Karen thing, a David thing, because of coming from private practice. We wanna be cost effective, we wanna be efficient. And frankly, if we get more attorneys, it's not easy to hire attorneys right now anyway, right? So what we wanna do is make sure we have enough attorneys to handle our cases and do the things that you all want us to do. And we're close to that if those folks don't have to do other work.
Well, and that's just it, right? So maybe we just bring in some paralegals to at least start phase one.
Which is what.
To do that, and then at least now you've freed up time for the attorneys to do
Yes.
attorney work, right? So it's a
Exactly.
domino effect.
You know, there's a lot of demands on the criminal justice system. There's a lot of demands on prosecutors. And I'm committed to them, I really am. But I can't create, you know, resources where I don't have them. Just like we're trying to focus more on things like restorative justice and pretrial supervision, but we need, oh, by the way, a lot of that work even could be done and supported by paralegals, but we are gonna need a lawyer heading up those things. But we're also, we're still at capacity with actually running the office and prosecuting crime. And those things we're trying to be as preventative as possible. We started the Commission to Address Gun Violence. We're involved in community violence interrupters. We have a gun task force. We work with the FBI. So we do a lot of things, but the other thing that we don't do as much as I would like to is diversionary programming. So we have courts, we have problem-solving courts, but there's so much my office could do. My office can do pre-charge diversions. When we know this is a mental health issue, it's not a serious felony, but it's a mental health issue, it's a substance abuse issue, and then we can prevent someone from even ever like really formally getting into the criminal justice system. We used to have first offender programs, all of that. There's no capacity to do that because I don't have the people.
So I'm sorry, just last thing, I know I've taken a lot of time. We have the money already to move the electronic system forward, that's already in place, correct? That's done?
Recommended.
It's
It's recommended.
But we don't have the funding to do it, or
So
we do.
the county, the county exec,
Put that in the budget, right?
the county exec puts us through the whole thing about when we ask and they come back and they say yes, no, yes, no. But I never get an opportunity at that level to do what I'm doing now. So that's all done by Betsy and whoever she's interfacing with EOB.
Yes, for them.
And so then they say, this is what we'll fund and this is what we will recommend to the board. So that's why I'm here, because they did not recommend the paralegals, and that's essential, I believe.
Do you know why they chose not to recommend the
They don't like
paralegals?
positions.
What did they tell
That's what
you?
They don't want, they,
Well,
Three.
big dollars.
Well, we just gave the animal control a
One
bunch of
answer.
positions.
You know, I can't hear with 6 people talking, so what did they tell you? What did the executive tell you?
I think it was the hiring freeze. They were not allocating towards positions. They did recommend for our family support because those are grant match. But otherwise, it was because it was personnel is what we were told.
Spend three
Just-
quarters of a million on
Commissioner
animals.
And what would be the number? I mean, you got 70
Sure, so
assistants or you got, I mean, 70?
For the,
We have 96 attorneys
oh,
roughly.
I think just
Yeah.
under 100.
so we're asking for purposes of you're asking how much the paralegal,
Paralegal, how many are you asking for?
paralegals?
We're asking for 5 and then a supervisor for the litigation support division. So the 5 would be with benefits, $478,231, and the litigation support supervisor with benefits is $123,072.
So a little over $500,000.
How many paralegals? I'm sorry, I missed that.
5 paralegals and then a
You're only asking for 5?
Well, we have
6.
6. But
Okay,
we
so
have
5 more.
we have some divisions that don't have paralegals at all. And a lot of those are actually housed in our family support division, which is grant matched and not at all what I'm talking about. It's completely separate. So like leaving out family support, how many do we have?
6 in our trial divisions, right?
6 in the
Six.
child division.
So, but I just wanna give you an example of family support. So family support has a very high volume practice. They have 4 attorneys and 4 paralegals. It's a 1-to-1 ratio because you can get all that work done if you have the right support. We think in the litigation divisions, I mean, we're asking for 8-to-1.
Yeah.
Someday, I'd
We're
like to be
asking
able
to
to do
8-to-1,
better.
and to get to 8-to-1, we need 5 more positions. So we're asking for 8 lawyers, 1 paralegal. And that person would be in charge of sending out discovery, which is literally and filling out subpoenas. That's putting something in the mail or emailing somebody, making sure, filing things with the court. And then doing real resources like helping with putting together prosecutions and litigation.
So when she says 8-to-1, she means we're trying to get our ratio from 15-to-1 to 8-to-1.
right.
So it would be 5, we're asking for 5 additional paralegal positions and 1 litigation support supervisor position.
And 1
And the one thing that I would say,
litigation
so
specialist.
the amount of evidence, digital evidence that we get and the amount of evidence that we would get, the prosecutor and I were here in 1999. The evidence that we had then is a whole different ballgame than what we have now. And it's described on most of the websites that I read as a tsunami of digital evidence. I have 1 murder case that I'm currently handling in addition to my other duties. I don't have a paralegal, I have a second chair, but the paralegals are invaluable. The ones that we have in the appellate division, if you need something, they're almost as good as a lawyer and, you know, they're better than
Sometimes they're better.
some of the newer lawyers. I mean,
They're more skilled, yeah.
more skilled, they can write briefs, they're basically attorneys, but we don't have to pay them as much. But just to give you an example, and then I'll stop talking, cell phone evidence, body worn cameras, crime scene photos, all the digital devices in a murder case, they all need to be downloaded. And it's not just downloading them, the sheriff's department examines and turns over the report, but then we have to go through it to make our case. And it's not just you know, just throw the cell phone up there, it's like, what did the defendant say to the victim, or what was going on before? And it's like just one case, there's just thousands of documents.
The black boxes on cars.
Yeah.
We
so-
get that information to tell where people are, where they were. Social media scans, I mean,
Yeah.
just a voluminous amount, I mean, your fitness watches, there's scary amount of ways to.
Jail calls and
The jail
videotapes
calls,
and
oh my God.
everybody's
The
ring
jail
camera
calls
is all
alone, I
evidence.
forgot about the jail. The jail calls, you don't have a right to privacy in the jail, obviously. And so many of our cases, it's critical to have somebody reviewing the jail calls. I'm embarrassed to tell you how I personally listen or read the jail calls in the Oxford case with the Crumbleys almost every day. Because it is tremendously helpful, because even though they're told it's not confidential, they can't help themselves, lots of defendants. And we also pick up ways, they're calling people, because by the way, there's no law enforcement scanning jail calls, guys, there's none. And we have found, because they give them to us, lots of times we have, particularly in Pontiac, if there's gang related, they're actually threatening witnesses from testifying. That's all, we've got lawyers listening to jail calls. They're just listening to jail calls. That makes absolutely no sense.
And the reason that you do it is it's your case, it's due diligence. In my murder case, the defendant made a comment about the forensic examiner, about his opinion. He's running an insanity defense, and he said that it was stupid. So we found that because one of our investigators listened to the jail calls. That's a huge piece of evidence, so.
I think it might even be in your district. It was a man, Vincent Bouchard, who killed and literally chopped up his wife and put her in a garbage bag and is claiming insanity. And it's, you know, where he went, we have the cell phone, we have the black box data of where he was, what he was doing, because that all comes into play in that kind of a defense. These are serious cases, and Justin also oversees the warrants division. I asked him to do, I think it's important to actually physically and really personally be involved in litigation, which again is not really what a former electeds would do, but I have learned so much from prosecuting personally the Oxford case. Then you learn immediately what people are doing and what they're not doing and what they're expected to do, and it was very eye-opening. But when he just said about the tsunami of digital evidence, that's all handled in the warrants division. We don't have any more warrant AP assistant prosecutors than we did 20 years ago. It's the same number.
So
it might even be less. So that's why we have this litigation support. We've sort of like MacGyvered together, saying like there's a student, there's a couple people that they literally just take all the digital evidence, because all of this has grown what we're expected to do, but we have not increased in our resources.
Right, so
Fit over there.
we need to take this out of this
projects.
meeting. You know, it's obviously a much bigger problem to solve, and the administration has a piece of it. I mean, if we're gonna be able to do something about opening up positions for you, they're gonna have to agree to it, so
Write that down on your list.
yeah, that,
Yeah, we can certainly follow up with one of the other committee chairs as well and see exactly where we'd want to.
And I wanna be
Yeah.
really fair, I didn't talk to Dave about this. Cause I don't get involved until this stage. And I'm happy to sit down whoever I need to talk to. I'm certain this was not, we didn't really get into the weeds. There wasn't really an opportunity to do what I'm doing here and really explain what that was. And I do understand the fiscal philosophy behind not just creating a bunch more positions.
Right.
But if
well,
you
we did open up several for animal control this year because they had a need, and we had already talked through it, a few months ago, so.
So just on that, I'm curious, were those investigators they needed?
No,
Similar to.
Staff.
well, labor.
Labor, staff.
Okay, but what I wanna point out is that we've increased the sheriff's resources and people and lots of other things like robots and helicopters and all that. We've increased this, and even animal control,
Yeah, she's in.
that's great, but it's great that the sheriff has drones guess who has to go through the drone video? We can't just accommodate, like, he's doing the right thing. You have to keep up on law enforcement techniques. I'm in support of that. I don't want you to think I'm not. What I'm saying is the prosecutor's office has not grown at all.
So do you have a proposal or a plan that says this is what we really
She had
need
the
and here's how much it'll
figured out.
cost? I heard you cranking through the numbers there a few minutes ago.
So what we've done is we've taken the people we had who were doing like the physical files and slowly they're getting away from that and we've looked at what we have and what we need and we believe with 5 paralegals, we're gonna reorganize those folks into one division, the litigation support division, and they will support all of the trial attorneys and handle all of the digital evidence and hopefully handle most of the subpoenas and other things that attorneys are doing. So we're talking about adding 5 positions and then we're gonna move people together into one unit.
They have a plan, they had a dollar amount attached to it.
And this is specifically to process digital material. That's a lot of the issue that.
I'd say the bulk of a paralegal's job is to deal with evidence, to prepare, both to prepare, but also you have to provide everything to the defense attorney. And those two things are huge jobs, and I would say that's the bulk of what a paralegal would do, right?
I agree with that.
So I'm gonna crank through the committee here, cause I got 4 people lined up who wanna ask you some questions. I will start with Commissioner Cavell, just on the off chance he won't take
The rest of everyone else's time.
So just to echo your point, when the sheriff came in here, the sheriff asked, right, so yes, 10 more positions for animal control. But the sheriff, and I don't recall any of us asking about this really, but creating 6 more positions full-time. One of them is an office support clerk intended for like evidence dumps. One office support clerk senior level, again, same point, like evidence dumps. 2 sheriff administrative specialists, which I think is also the same thing. And 1 user support specialist, which what they've talked about is the computer person to help go through all the like gang stuff with people online and people in the jail and stuff, so like evidence stuff. So just saying the sheriff, out of their 6 new positions we're going to give them, 5 of them are people to help with sifting evidence. So just to echo what the prosecutor's saying, they're
investigating it and they're getting it. But for instance, with the phone, all of the phone evidence in Oxford, they did all that work, but
then you have to interpret
we
it.
go through all of it. We found things that they couldn't have because they can't, because once you sit down to actually, they're investigating to charge crimes, this is a better way of saying it. When they present us a charge and they ask, here's the case, and we're making in the warrants division a call about whether or not there's probable cause to charge this person. When you get to the actual litigating part where you have to do a preliminary exam and a trial, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And for the most part, most law enforcement, their real heavy lift is over once they've given it to us. So we then, that's why investigator positions that we have are really important. But I've personally gone through all of that stuff. I have done that myself and it is very time consuming. Now, I'm not saying we wouldn't do it, I'm saying that they're gonna, those positions, which I support by the way, I do. I support all of, anything he can do to help with grabbing more of that digital evidence. And but their job's gonna be to grab it.
Right.
And then
You have to interpret it.
we have to figure out if we wanna use it and we have to get through it, so asking for that without us getting resources to do something with it doesn't make any sense.
And that's what I'm trying to say, is they're getting 6, and that's to basically get the rocks out of it.
Did the executive recommend that?
Yeah, it's in our thing.
We're the choir.
So,
Stuff here.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and then the question was, you had mentioned all these other like task forces you're a part of, which are helping you live out the values that we all like profess. So what are some of those? You talked about gun violence, just.
I started the commission to address gun violence. I'll be requesting a sit down with the commission to really bring you all on up to speed. We do have 2 commissioners that serve on that, but it's very preventative in nature and essential. I am part of the Juvenile Justice Task Force that I was appointed by the governor. We have the gun violence task force that we that more is gang related in Pontiac that we work with in with the FBI. We have a restorative justice initiative that we have 6 lawyers working on, and we're looking at other models across the state and the country to bring that to our juvenile division. We have a pretrial services and supervision committee to revamp and shift from wealth-based detention to real things that we know the data shows works in terms of supervising people pre-trial. And then not at this moment, but we're actually gearing up right now to present with the human trafficking task force through the commission. When I came in, I changed the drug unit to the trafficking unit, and we focus on the trafficking of humans and drugs because there's so much intersection. There are new drugs on the market almost every month that are terrifying. The human trafficking component, we're 8th in the nation for human trafficking, and
I told someone 3rd, I'm glad now I better switch it to 8th, I just talked about it.
you say top 10.
Yeah.
And it's increasing, and by the way,
I said 3rd.
that number is not even reflective because we don't have a human trafficking real force in Oakland County. And just a good example, we do have, in my trafficking unit, drugs and humans, I've got 3 lawyers, that's it. And one of them is not even, it's considered a section, not a division, so I can't even pay the leader a chief's position. Very, very educated and up to speed. Many of you saw in the newspaper a few weeks back, there was 2 very small children abandoned at Lamphere High School near a garbage dumpster. And of course, I was very interested in finding out everything I could. None of it made sense. There was a note, everyone thought, well, she must be mentally ill, it was a young mom. But what we learned is that she was staying in a hotel around the price point where we know there's a lot of trafficking going on. And she had left her partner, who she said she was in a domestic abuse situation, and gone to live in a hotel room with this other man and this woman, a friend of hers. And so I called Cindy, who's our section leader, and said, you know, none of this makes sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense that he says he doesn't know she left with her 2 small children, strapped in car seats, by the way, for hours they were there. One was 3 months old and one was 2. And it turns out we strongly believe that she's being trafficked. That boyfriend that she was living with, who denies he's a boyfriend, also had another woman there, and when you talk to the clerk of the hotel, he's a trafficker. Now, we're trying to put a case together, but we're now really educating local law enforcement because there's no task force. So what we're gonna be really looking into with the board that already has a commission or a task force is, you know, look, NET is important, but NET does, if you think about how many resources NET has, NET they don't even do marijuana anymore, that's out. Right. Yeah. And they don't do anything about human trafficking. So we really need a designated trafficking entity like NET. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that I am thinking about and we're moving forward. And I'm telling you, I'm doing it like with the shoestring. I have so many workarounds because I sit around tables where people will say, we need this, and I say, guys, you can't snap your fingers. You have to understand everybody else's perspective, where they're coming from. They're our funding source and they have more to worry about than just the prosecutor's office. So we have to be very smart and reasonable about what is it we really need. And you should also know that we've had people say, I'm down 2 people in the juvenile division, I'm down 2 people, and I say, well, okay, well, hold on. I actually review personally the trial schedules for each division now. And I do that because I wanna make sure that we're using and resources that we have and that we are equitably distributing work in the office. There shouldn't be positions where somebody's load is so much lighter because of the position they're in. Do you really need another person? I know traditionally you have, but if you stand back, that's my job, and look at what's taking the most time, what kind of cases take the most sophistication, that I'm not just gonna rely on what we've always done. So I'm shifting, I'm telling chiefs all the time, I'm not gonna fill that position because I just looked at all of the calendars and you've got one person who's only in court 3 times a week, so there's room here for you to do more. So I'm saying that just to let you know that I know whenever you see me, I have my hand out. But
And the next one coming is gonna be the same way, so.
yeah.
But I would like to try and get through our questioners.
Okay, sorry.
Well,
That's
so
all right.
just to round out the point then, it sounds like we've kind of done the easier part thus far, right? We've got someone in office with a team that's trying to prevent gun violence, someone that's working towards juvenile justice, someone who's addressing gang violence, someone who cares about restorative justice, someone who wants to give people, the 40% of people in jail right now in Oakland County who are there because they can't make bail and have not been charged, there's over
Right.
400 people. And someone who's addressing human trafficking, so she's doing all the,
They've
we
not
got her
been-
to do all that stuff, but
they've
now
not
she
been
needs money
convicted,
for it.
they've all been charged.
Okay.
Right.
Love it. So that, like, we've got the first part done, but it sounds like we have not yet completed the second part,
Well, I
which is giving
think
you the
we-
stuff to sustain this.
We've all heard
Okay.
that there's an issue certainly with inadequate staffing at that paralegal level.
Okay.
To kind of free up everything else that you're trying to do. So, okay, I wanna crank through this list here because some of the other commissioners deserve their time too, and Commissioner Smith Charles, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. More of a comment, less question, just to say that I feel that we are in a class, you, myself, Charlie, Commissioner Joliet, Bob, not Bob,
Sure, I'm the head of the class.
Charles, who used to sit across in your caucus. Yes, Chuck Moss, thank you. You know, we were all in a class. We came in, cut our teeth. So I do feel a special kindred spirit with the work that you've done. And I would also just recollect the first meeting that you came and you kind of lamented about some of those things that were dilapidated, to say it nicely.
Yes.
I don't know about everybody else, but you're preaching to the choir when it comes to me. Funding law means you have to, funding order means you have to fund law, you know, however that works,
Yeah.
as a SUV wonk over here.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm here for it,
That-
and as long as it's being
Law and order.
utilized properly, defendants deserve all of that they get. So really just an opportunity, since I don't get to talk with you very often or see you, a little bit of a fan girl here of yours. But just continue the good work, and I'm praying for all of you. You know, the national spotlight's been on our community since last, or was it two Novembers now?
Almost one.
Yeah, so just wanted to say I'm here to support.
Thank you, but we would love to have you visit anytime. You're all welcome.
Yeah, sounds like.
All right, Commissioner Hoffman, you're next.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that we all know that you have to have the right tool to do a job. And I want you to know that I support whatever technology upgrades you need to get this
People.
your system up to date, and I support the paralegals 100%. You'll never do the job right.
Okay, is that it, Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Oh, I'll be brief too. I just want to let you know also, I did have a hard time voting for the $750,000 for the animals, although I like animals, but with your request, people are first in my book, and I would like you to, you know, talk to administration and our leadership of our board, and I would certainly support this year finding money somewhere, because you can't, just like you say, law firms don't work this way. This is an important part of our county, and it just baffles me that on this stuff with IT and staffing that we're so far behind, but we get all these awards for Oakland County. I mean, I've been here 21 years, and it baffles me sometimes how we get, I'm sorry, I am on tape, but how we get all these IT awards, but we can't even get access to the website, right? I mean, or internet sometimes, so, I mean, like, right, Wi-Fi, you know, so it baffles me. So you say all that too, I mean, you get where I'm coming from, I support you, I definitely think that, I didn't know you were just this far down from paralegals. I think you had a huge job after 12 years of and lack of a better word, if she's listening, neglect to that office. I mean, I think that's not an inappropriate word to say. And so I think most of us or all of us will support you, so I hope that, I know this is something new that we just heard today, so I'm hoping it gets forwarded and I think we all support it for the budget. We can find money hopefully somewhere, so.
Thank you, and I'm happy to talk in any space about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seems like every year there's something that crops up that we all go,
It's
oh wow.
important, so, yeah.
First we're hearing about it. This is it this year. Next up, I have Commissioner Powell.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. The first question I have is, and if we need to talk offline, just say talk offline. I was wondering with the automatic clearance of, y'all know what I'm talking about. Expungements, automatic clearance. Have y'all been experiencing that people still see on iChat their stuff is clear, but jobs are still denying them based off some other resources that they can research backgrounds? Have y'all heard of any problems in that area?
Possibly, but I do think we should talk about that
Okay,
offline
great.
because I wanna be able to listen and really give you a meaningful response.
Perfect, okay, so we'll do that. And then my second one is, I just wanted to say, I'm very supportive of the prosecutor's attorney office. Her department has really been kind of like underdog status and their needs. And we know the prior prosecutor was like outdated in all of her stuff and needs and everything. So I'm just gonna advocate to my colleagues that wherever we can kind of help, because we know, and we also know, even in our communication process, that getting information out is challenging. So we can just imagine them having to look at all this different data and all this other stuff, and they've been the same 20 years, and technology's moving, so we have to catch up. So anything or any support that we can try to advocate for or get this department, I just ask our commissioners to please consider it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other speakers lined up.
Good thing she came in person.
Yeah, we are glad to.
I'm glad you came in person. At first I thought you weren't. So thank you.
I think if you're gonna ask for something like that, you should show up.
I think
I
that's
don't think
good.
we have any answers for you today,
Right.
but certainly you
I was just
elevated an
asking you to
issue
listen, but I
that
appreciate all your comments and
we all
questions.
feel need to be talked about.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much. Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation with the district courts last year, remember that?
Yeah.
Where they didn't have what they needed and we,
Cause I'm at IT.
and again, it was IT.
Commissioners, we're gonna go right into the clerk's presentation, and I know that they're waiting in the hallway, so
Okay.
we'll invite them in.
All right, come on in. Thank you for coming. Join us at the end of the table.
How about the
30 days.
Hi. Thank you for coming. Oh, look who's here.
Make a few calls, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Right. Tell.
Yeah, they'll split screen.
We don't need money for Lisa till.
Lisa always asks for money when she comes.
She doesn't.
Oh, there you go, yeah. There you go.
Right. It's like getting a tab.
Yeah.
How to get rid of
That's
that.
what I'm
Oh,
saying.
you just,
Oh, okay. I was thinking too hard.
yeah, yep.
Thank you. I'm like, I know
Aaron
it's
figured it out.
Doesn't that blow you away?
something a 2-year-old can figure out.
Page,
Which is how old you
No.
are today, Erin.
Because
288, you guys, page 288 and 27.
Sometimes I really hate
Everything's on fire.
knowing we have
Yeah,
that.
don't say that. In front of
All right.
Lisa.
You're right.
Charlie's got lots of ideas,
Yeah.
always.
Charlie needs to
Charlie.
start printing some money. That's what we need Charlie to do. He needs to learn down his basement.
That's right.
The
They're
old
called
B-52,
Cabell bucks.
isn't it the B-52 somewhere in the
Cabell
basement?
There you go.
There's a Camelot song. Yeah.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah.
Time window. Okay. Welcome to the office of the County Clerk Register of Deeds.
Thank you.
We are happy to have you here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm gonna start with introducing my chief team here. Craig Jones, Chief Deputy Register, Jennifer Howden, Chief Deputy Clerk, and Joe Roselle, Director of Elections. Thank you. Today, the biggest challenges to the budget this year for me are, well, I guess as far as, I should say changes, not challenges. Challenges are something different. Changes are in the Register of Deeds office division, namely enhanced access fees, mortgages, and recording fees revenue. You might remember last year that I voiced some concern about those line items being increased, knowing that the levels that were then put in for 3 years were not, that wasn't realistic, knowing what was on the horizon with the economy. So things such as a lack of inventory as far as homes for sale, and then also interest rates, right, for mortgages. Those have gone up tremendously in the last year. And so, you know, fewer refis, you know, if you get a refi, that's a mortgage recorded, so we have actually, Craig put together a comparison of January to August, how many recordings in 2022 for those months versus those same months in 2023. There's actually 39% fewer documents, and what that equates budget-wise is $1.1 million.
Wow.
Right?
So we know another department that's looking for, I'm joking, the department before you came in and has like overspent everything.
Overspent? I don't do that. I try and stay within my budget, but I will say, you know.
It was a joke.
Yeah,
We all got it, we got it, Glenn, we got it.
it.
They didn't like that.
You know, with PeopleSoft, I had access to information, or I was provided reports on a monthly basis of where each one of my budgets was at, what percentage we had spent or, you know, brought in, that sort of thing. And Workday doesn't have that functionality, so it's really frustrating for me, for somebody who's like very hands-on with my budget and likes to know, like, oh, we can't spend that because we don't have any more money there, or we have to move money or something, to not always have that information on a monthly basis. So just putting it out there. Another line item in the Register of Deeds office, we are increasing, and that is tracked index to, we're increasing that revenue to $100,000. However, I put a caveat with that it is possible, we hope not, but it is possible that that line item actually goes down to zero. We're just seeing what's happening in some other counties, and that's just a possibility. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that.
What was that?
Tracked index. So it was at 24,000, we're increasing it to 100,000. Last year it was, I think, 269,000 that we brought in. It's just a possibility that it goes to zero. So just don't be surprised. We're trying to not be surprised. We're hoping it doesn't happen, but we'll see. In clerk, the need for a new case management system grows stronger every day, as our current system is over 50 years old. I know I've talked during public comment and such during caucus about this. If we're forced to go with the state system, it's very likely we're gonna need more staff and that we will lose revenue there, because the state will have all of our documents, all of our records, and people will probably be able to purchase them from the state as opposed to us. So I would really, I'm just gonna impress upon again, with my team, as well as courts, as well as IT, having gone through as far as we could with an RFP process, good faith, looking at many different options, and really feeling that the state solution does not work for Oakland County at this point in time. And not having a say or control over that is beyond frustrating. So
let me stop you there. So is it IT that's telling you how it's gonna be, or is this in limbo still? I mean, where does this stand?
Okay, well, you recently voted on, I don't know if you're still calling it a resolution, but two vendors, is that the right word?
Yeah, Finalis.
Were hired for $479,000 to analyze the state's solution as well as to see how much life is left in our system.
Yeah.
So no, IT was I think actually put out a statement with, within the team saying the state solution does not work for Oakland County. So it's not coming from IT, it's not coming from the courts, and it's not coming from us. So,
But you're not currently budgeted for anything for this case management system to be upgraded?
Over 2 years ago, Kevin Offner, the former court administrator, had a meeting with the county exec, and money had been put aside supposedly for that. So, just saying, if we are forced to go with the state system, we're gonna need more staff because it doesn't work for us, and B, we'll probably have to contract with some other vendors to make it work. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then again, the loss of revenue. Also,
I guess I'm still not clear, are you being forced to go with the state system, or is it still in limbo, or are you gonna get to decide which?
I have been told by the county exec that I don't get to do that, well, not just me, but courts, that we're not making that decision.
Okay. Let's let, okay.
Mark your question.
Plug in there, Charlie, yeah.
So, we've had an increase in overtime, I'll say in clerks in dealing with the auto set-asides. But we will be getting reimbursed for that from the state, so just wanted to address that. I guess I couldn't sit here without reminding you that I don't have fire suppression. I laugh, but it's not funny. I don't know if I bother saying it anymore. I know that I've been told that it's somewhere in a plan somewhere, but I have no idea when or where.
I will tell you that we've been asking to have this bathroom here made accessible since the day I came to work here, which was January 1st, 2019. And they told me it is in discussion and is planned to be done about 8 months from now. So that's kind of the pace that these kinds of changes are being made at that I'm aware of. That's just one that I'm aware of, so yes, it's not a joke. I know that you're concerned, really, and it's to facilities, not to us, really.
Madam Chair, you made a little concession when it was germane to that point for other commissioners, and I just was gonna say, we were in there and they were saying maybe water wouldn't be the best because you're so paper. So let's expand that when we talk about what.
Well, I said fire suppression, I didn't say what form, I just fire suppression, so whether it's gas, whether it's foam, I mean.
And if we got you off your paper system.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're electronic on all those things, but we also have a lot of historic documents, okay?
We have those old, big, large books and tombs and old records that are the
Old
original
atlases
records,
and
even though we've made them electronic in some fashion.
We have historic documents in all three divisions, so it's everything, we also are electronic in every division, but we also have historical documents, so. We also don't have a generator, and we've switched to these VoIP phones, which if you think about it, then the power goes out and we don't have phones. So I understand that perhaps there's not a generator for the entire building. But just like at your house, you could get one that just is to certain circuits, just to, keep your furnace running or something. It would be nice if we had some sort of backup here for phones for an emergency. And not that this is my division, but in the basement, there are oftentimes inmates down there. I mean, I wouldn't want to be down there when the lights go out. So things of that nature. So, and I'm sure you're all anxious to hear about elections and early voting. And I can tell you, we have 2 RFPs out right now. One for a software program to provide online applications, scheduling and training of election workers, so really election worker management, as well as managing the early voting sites. So that's one RFP. Then we have another RFP out for, we'll say, accessories, not the voting equipment, but things like voting booths, ballot containers, things of that nature. As far as the equipment, that is a contract with the state. But, and I in thinking about like what I was talking about today, I realized when we got our new equipment, I don't know that I ever shared that I negotiated different terms with our vendor than what the state had negotiated. I negotiated better terms. So I negotiated a lower price on our high-speed tabulators. I negotiated that they actually have an employee that works in Oakland County, that they have parts and extra machines, tabulators and VATs in Oakland County. I mean, it's not just for Oakland County, it's for anyone who also uses our vendor, but creating, in a sense, a business, so to speak, in Oakland County, but putting that in our contract in an addendum to the state contract. So I will be, again, negotiating better prices than what they have quoted the state at. But we're not quite there yet. So, and we are waiting on some things from the state to enable us to be able to start early voting in November. But so everything is a big if right now. As far as going November. So I don't have a price tag for any of those things yet, but we will be coming to you soon with asks for all of those different things. And I do appreciate the support that has been expressed in supporting us in kind of running early voting for the majority of the county. And let's see, okay. Just running through some other changes to keep our budget closer to actuals, a reduction in assumed names revenue, an increase in bond fees, reducing certified copies revenue, reducing civil action entry fees, enhanced access fees, garnishment fees, metered postage revenue, increasing miscellaneous revenue, increasing motion fees, reducing photostats revenue. Those are some little, not highlights, but just a couple little changes in there. And then last year, passport actuals were low because we were still operating with COVID and really, and actually the federal agency wasn't even really processing. So those numbers should be back up for this fiscal year. And so those are 2 line items. That's the passport line item, but also the photographs. I think that's all I have to touch on, unless we're just asking for big asks, which I guess I should here. So once again, fire suppression generator, case management system. I put in the Register of Deeds office, they actually have no break room. So when they eat their lunch or take their break, anyone from the public can see them. They're just sitting there out in the open. And so it would be nice if they could have some privacy and some distance. And in addition to that, one of the tables is right next to staff that are doing their work. So it's usually quieter at that table, but still it's a distraction for those team members as well. So if we could have a break room with walls would be lovely. And then finally, a bathroom. I think I'm the only countywide who doesn't have their own bathroom. So that's the bottom of the list. That's the least important.
She is the stepchild of
but I am the stepchild, so the redheaded stepchild. So that's all. So any questions?
Actually, stepchild.
Before we start, I guess I would like for Mr. Rozell to just tell us real quick how the primary went. Since this was the first time that we had the 9 days, 8 days of early voting, right?
No, that has not gone into effect
Oh, that doesn't go into effect till November? Okay.
Well, actually, it doesn't go into effect really for February, legally, or
Forgive me for not
requirement.
knowing the gory details.
No, so the Constitution requires it to be in every state and federal election. It can be more, and that's why when we do it, we will be doing it for every election. And that's why we are
Federal.
hoping to do it in November if we have all the tools that we need to be able to do that. So the only change that was with this election really were the military and overseas voters, as far as Prop 2 changes, the military and overseas voters ballots, allowing 6 days after the election, as long as they've been postmarked by election day, to still be counted. So that delays when on our website, it changes from unofficial results to official results, when we can actually certify the campus. So that happened this morning. We finished signing off because we had 2 communities that each had 1 military overseas voter ballot that had not been returned. They still were never returned, but, right, they didn't come, yeah. So, that's the only change so far from Prop 2.
How many communities do you do the absentees for now?
20.
Are we 20?
20?
20.
Ish.
Okay.
And it's been since 2020. And everybody that's in has been very satisfied, even when we brought you the fee proposal that we were gonna pass on some costs. They all said, fine, we like it. And
Yeah, it's not-
a good partnership and they all stated.
Yeah, and we haven't always had 20, so it's increased as we do it. And when I had a wonderful conversation with the chancellor from OCC about space, and they were a wonderful partner, and we were able to utilize their, what do they call it, the old gym?
Yeah.
On their campus, so we were able to bring on another community. We actually added West Bloomfield, my community, and we were able to tabulate for them as well. Because it takes space for us to have all the people to be able to do it. So we kind of were at a standstill at a certain point. Then with the addition of being able to use that space, we could increase how many communities we could partner with and contract with and tabulate for, so.
And we're officially larger than Detroit now. We processed 156,800 ballots in the last November election, which was about 30,000 more than Detroit processed. And we have results on our website at 8:15.
Yeah.
So we're pretty proud
It's
of
fast, yeah.
the team effort that we put together to make that happen.
Yeah, it's fast.
Appreciate it. Okay, I will
And
start.
everybody likes getting fast results, right? Nobody wants to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning to know if they've been
Nerve-wracking,
Is it a happy beer or a sad beer?
Farewell or.
That is the hardest night
Yeah.
every year, is election night. Okay, I have 4 commissioners who have questions, starting with Commissioner Hoffman.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to compliment the treasurer for that program you started to help people who might get scammed on their property with,
PRN, my baby, property
yes,
records
and I don't
notification.
know if everybody knows about
Yeah.
that. Don't you?
Yeah, 'cause it's
You want me to do
But
my
it's an
commercial?
incredible program.
Thank you, and it is my baby, thank you so much. If you haven't signed up for it, you should. It is, so first of all, we have fraud in the Register of Deeds office. Our hands are tied as far as what we can reject at the counter or being submitted electronically. I never could have imagined I'd see the amount and different kinds of fraud that I see. Forged quitclaim deeds, bogus liens, all kinds of things. And when you sign up, it's basically like a Google alert on our records. And so if something is recorded with your chosen search term, you get an email notifying you. And the email tells you what kind of document it is, the names on it, gives you a hot link. And what sets my program out from any other is that it can be on, literally you can use any search term you want. So a lot of counties have what they call a fraud alert. Even Oakland County used to have one that it was just on name. And I can tell you, I'm not the only Lisa Brown in Oakland County. So I had actually signed up for it, but every couple months, and that was another thing, it was only every couple months I'd get a ton of emails and I'd like freak out. Oh my God, somebody's, doing something to my house or to my property or, putting a lien on or something. And I'd click through all of them and none of them had anything to do with me. just seeing commercials for check your credit report, check your credit rating, and I thought no one ever checks the title to your home, and it's usually your biggest financial investment. And even if you do, the next day something could be recorded on it. So I did win, I've won national awards for it. It was showcased at the Google Next conference in 2019. I'm very proud of it. It's my baby, thank you. And yeah, the treasurer I know has been going around. So before that, I have.
I don't mean the treasurer, I mean the clerk, I
Oh,
misspoke.
okay, you said the treasurer. Okay, because the
Yours-
treasurer
it's
is
your
not talking about.
program.
It is my program.
Right.
It's 100% my program, my
I'm
baby.
sorry.
That's okay, no, because, I will tell you, I think that the treasurer has been sharing that information with local
Sure.
treasurers, and I have partnered with a lot of our local treasurers. Some of them yelled at me and said no, but some of them have been like amazing partners and putting the information about it, my little third of a page thing on it, in their tax bills. And Bloomfield Township just did it for a second time, and I can't tell you how many phone calls we have received because people got that in their tax bill, because that's something you open, right? I mean, everybody opens their tax bill. And we've signed up so many more people because of just that. And we're like, oh, are you in Bloomfield Township? Because we know. And like immediately I emailed at 1:00 that first day, I emailed the Bloomfield Township treasurer, who unfortunately just retired, but I said, hey, your tax bill's hit because the phone calls have started. And literally, it's, thank you. I'm very proud of it.
No, you're welcome, and you should be, and I wanna thank Joe too. The election division does an incredible job.
Yes, they do.
They help all of us with our reports. If there's an error, they remind us. Great job, thank you.
All my divisions are awesome. We're the best.
That little letter with the green printing though,
Yeah.
when that shows up after the election in your mailbox, you're like,
Sometimes it's just hard to say your name. Phonetic.
All right, next up we have Commissioner Long.
Okay, I just want to put on a list somewhere. I think Lisa Brown has asked for fire suppression for how many years now? I mean, a lot, since you've been here almost. And I think we have to realize, like, we're Oakland County, there's people working there too. I mean, this is just blows my mind away that we don't have fire suppression for not only for our staff, number one, but for all those records. This is crazy. And I have to put a little thing, we're doing 60 million for new buildings, but we're leaving something with, if you're not gonna move with no fire suppression. And this is, I have it on my list. I don't know how much clout I have anymore. I probably should have did it a little, about a few years back maybe. But I do have it on my list, for amendments I want, because if you're gonna stay there too, you have to have fire suppression. I mean, it is crazy to me. It's not, it's, and foremost, it's the people, and second, it's the records. But, once again, I'm gonna say, like we said with the prosecutor, we're Oakland County, we should not have records with no fire suppression in Oakland County. It's, 2023. Actually, our records should be digital, but that's another thing too.
Yeah, most of them are.
But I know a lot of those maps, people want those books, those big books, you have to keep that stuff, so I get it. But I am going to try to, we don't have an estimate or anything, right? Cause it's like you say it every year, has anyone ever even got an estimate from you?
Somebody has.
Okay.
I'm not privy to that
Okay.
information, but I think somebody, I know people.
I would like to find, I'm gonna try to work on it for you, I just wrote that down on my list of 4 things so far, but that is, I just added that to my list, so.
Project. Yeah, how many years?
I think most of us would agree, if there's money, this is important.
You think 6? I think it was more than that. So at one point, there was what was called the Domino Project. There was another department that was gonna move into the courthouse. And if that happened, then the grandfathering in of not having fire suppression would be lifted. And so at that point, they did have to price all those things out.
Okay.
We were gonna not just get fire suppression, but our lights down there, they cause fires, to be honest with you. We've had a fire in the Register of Deeds office and the lights and
I remember
sparks
you
out there.
said
Yes.
something. and
So,
caught on fire.
we were supposed to get lights. I think it was gonna be new HVAC, lights, fire suppression, along with everybody, with new people moving in. So somewhere once upon a time, for sure, there was probably a quote.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean,
All right, well, I have that on my list too, so I'll try, I'll do everything I can. I think a lot of us would probably agree.
And as far as I know, we're not moving. Nobody
Yeah,
has anything to
yeah.
me, and so yeah,
Okay,
we'll
well,
still be here.
It's on my list here, I don't think we wanna forget about it, I think you've asked for it for many years now, and I mean, it might take us long, like Gwen was saying, but I mean, to me, sometimes it's crazy how long things take when we're such a
And I mean,
affluent county that we
other
are.
counties, their courthouse, I mean, has burned down, so.
Right.
Does that give you anxiety? Okay,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, no, it wouldn't give me
I mean,
anxiety
for
there,
real.
not even as the people working there too for safety, but as all your papers and I mean, all our records and so, alright, that's my
Thank you,
spiel on
thank
that,
you,
I'm just, I agree with her.
No, I know, I'm like, do I say it, do I not say it,
No,
I'm
you
a
say
broken
it. You
record, I
gotta
keep
say
saying
it.
it doesn't happen, is there a point of
We
me
would think
saying
it
it?
had gotten fixed.
Yeah, you have to say it because it took
Telling us.
52 district court, how many years to get internet? But we got it now in 2022, woo!
That's right, that was the biggie last
Yeah,
year for sure.
so,
They weren't going
It's on my
they weren't leaving
list.
those chairs till we said.
right.
Okay, next up I have Commissioner Rahman, followed by Commissioner Cabell.
Thank you. So just piggybacking off what Commissioner Long said, I guess it's a little bit surprising and confusing to me. You mentioned like a generator. You know, again, I don't know what type of generator, how big a generator, like in my own home, we put in a generator. I can't imagine it's rocket science. Again, we also don't know what the transition is to the new buildings, when and if those are complete. You know, so my hope and my prayer for you is that maybe you are one of the departments that move and maybe all of this magically appears with that new facility. But if it doesn't, I can't imagine a generator is more than maybe $20,000-$30,000. I'm just guessing, I don't know what it would take to outfit your operation. Fire suppression, same kind of thing. We're talking about sheriff's office wanting a, $50 million training center. And then we're talking about fire suppression and generators kind of in that same conversation. So it just boggles my mind.
Mine too.
Do we know?
Cause I don't really ask for much, if you notice, I don't really.
And that's the thing,
I
right?
don't come
So
to you very much, I don't ask for a lot, but I'm asking for something that, isn't a luxury, right?
Right. Well, and as we hear from these departments, again, echoing what Commissioner Long said, we're Oakland County, right? Like, we should be the best of the best. We have the money and resources to do it. It's just frankly surprising to me as a new commissioner that so many basic things aren't already in place, right? So having said all that, anyway, getting to the essence of my question, and maybe this is what she asked as well, do we know dollars and cents what we're looking at for these couple of things, or even a ballpark?
Somebody does, but it's not me.
Stab in the dark?
I don't know.
Don't even know.
I don't know. I mean, fire suppression is gonna be millions, I'm sure you're retrofitting, your whatever, but I don't know, I mean, facilities or whoever has dealt with that would know, but I don't know.
Generator? I would think,
Yeah,
I
I
think
know
that's
it's-
low hanging fruit. I can't imagine that's super tough to do.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think in the conversation that whoever, cause I called Homeland Security about it, because I do feel that it is a security issue for us not to have a generator, for everything that we do and everything that is in this building. And they have a generator over there, so they didn't even know when we lost power once, but, even if it's multiple generators for this building, I'm not saying, cause I mean, I'm sure the treasurer's office would like to have one too. Again, we're all on these phones that operate with electricity. They'll operate for a short time, but then they won't. So, if it's multiple generators throughout, I don't know, but again, yeah, and I mean, just to, not to be whiny, but hearing of other departments that have brand new kitchens with stainless appliances and comfort rooms and exercise rooms, and literally this is around Oakland County, and I'm asking for, this is what I'm asking for. It's a little frustrating, and it feels like a slap in the face, not to me, but to all the hardworking people that are part of my team.
And yeah, to your point, lunch table was one of them.
Lunch table, I mean, it's like
I mean, we have a
freezing.
table,
I
but
know,
like
but
a
where it
room,
is,
just,
where it
like
is,
they can
like
have
simple.
privacy for eating.
Yeah.
I'm with you, yes.
Not having like customers stare at them while they eat their
Right,
lunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
What are you eating?
When she's saying it's the old title area where it used to be space that was used, but after COVID it's not used, now it's used for lunchroom. And it's not a lunchroom, it's
It's the public space.
a public space, but it just happens to be available because of COVID. mean, that's the only reason that,
And well, and
that's the only reason that
I had
space became
another
available.
table, really, I had brought in another table, so we could have at least a little break from that, but then with COVID now it's kind of like divided up between the two. But if we could just have a space that's enclosed, just one space enclosed, it would just be,
So people aren't
Yeah.
watching.
you know, it would just be,
Let me clarify that one, that's.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay,
You jumped in before.
the last
Sorry.
question I have
Just kidding, yeah.
is Commissioner Cavell.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, cause looking at your budget, you're a donor department, right?
Yeah,
So can you just kinda like go through the revenues you bring in and then how much of it goes away? Like for example, CPLs,
so
yeah, I mean like.
CPL, so you're in the restricted fund section. So CPL fund can only be used for things regarding CPLs. So it pays for staff, it pays for all of the cards that we have to get, the printing machine, everything that in regards to CPL, but the law limits what we can spend that money on, and it can only be used for CPLs.
So, right, so.
Anything regarding CPLs.
So in 2022, the actual was $592,214, right? But then all these other numbers for the following adopted and amended and recommended budgets are even. It's $400,000. So like, did we get a lot less CPL licenses? Or
They're cyclical. You get them every 4 to 5 years depending on your date of birth or your birthday, when it falls, when you apply.
so they went down by like 30%?
Are you're looking at the budget?
Actuals, the ones the actuals when we actually brought in, the other one's just the budget.
Right.
Budget set at
So-
$400,000, but
What
the
was-
actuals, we brought
say-
in more,
Than what we budgeted for.
more than what we
Right.
budgeted.
So then, that's what I'm asking is how much was the clerk donating to the general fund?
No, it can't go into the general
That
fund,
stays
it's
in there.
restricted, it cannot go, that money legally cannot go into the general fund, it
So
has
then
to
what
stay,
was-
it
what
is,
was
But that's not
the-
the fund balance that you're looking at.
What was the actual amount of money then that was brought in
that would
last
be your
year?
that first
first
column on the
column.
page,
592,
yeah, that would be what we brought in.
and then we're expecting it to be 400.
That's just what the budget is, I mean, but again, that money cannot touch the general fund. That money has to stay in a restricted fund that can only be used for CPL, anything in regards to CPLs.
So then though, your budget's gonna go down by like $200,000 then, based on these line items.
No, those are the actuals that was brought in, was 596, that's actually the revenue we brought
So
in.
there's,
Right.
They just had
I got
increased
mine gone.
activity that year,
Yeah.
recording,
I got
getting
your classic
permits.
and I think.
So then you had to do like $200,000 more worth of work.
Basically brought in 200,000 more than the budget was set at.
So then could you use some of that for a gun buyback? Cause you already have these sunk costs that are equal to $400,000,
so
but
that's
you
not in
have
relation to, like, the law is very specific as to, that doesn't have to do with the CPL.
Okay.
So,
And then are there other fees that you collect that could go up to bring in more revenue for the county, or do you have statutory requirements?
there is in general, you mean throughout my office? So some of the fees are statutory, some are set by the board. What we charge for a copy of a vital record is set by the board. So things like that. What we charge for me to officiate a wedding, is set by the board.
That could probably go up.
That could probably go up. I am the cheapest, I shouldn't say the cheapest, I'm the best deal in town. I am the best deal in town, not the cheapest, I am the best deal in town. We only charge $10 for me to officiate. And I will say, I get compliments every time, cause I make it special. It's not just like, do you, okay, here you go, you know, I make it special, but, so, yeah, but a lot of the fees are statutory, everything in deeds is statutory. Everything in elections is statutory, so there's just some, in clerk, obviously CPL, that's all statutory,
But to that point, and I think I understand where Commissioner Cavell is going, when animal control came in here and they're asking for 9 more people, one of the big asks from us was, will you raise the dog license fees?
Yep.
And consider licensing cats. and they said yes to both of those.
So half their budget's gonna
So
come
I
from
don't,
fees.
you have control over over some of them. I will tell you, there's a bill, being thrown around to increase, the marriage license, fee. I don't know if that's gonna move or not, but it's out there, and that would be a big increase, and more of that revenue would stay with us versus going to.
We don't have any of that.
We get like a
Some
teeny
goes in front of
tiny,
the court and
we
some
get a
goes to the
teeny tiny. And then, notary fund, that's another, like there's a lot of charges where we don't get even, like if you said, oh, well, it costs X amount of money to, $20?
Well, both ways, yeah.
So-
There's $10 to the state.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, $20, but, we don't get to keep everything sometimes for things like recording fees. I'll give a better example. Okay, flat fee for almost anything to be recorded in the Register of Deeds office, $30 per whatever document, okay? If it's a 30-page mortgage, it's still gonna be $30. If it's a one-page quitclaim deed, it's still $30. But $30 isn't all going into the general fund. So there's money that goes into the remonumentation fund, there's money that goes into the automation fund, like there's just all these different things, but again, that's statutory. But there are a couple, like I said, long answer to a short question. There are some fees that the board could increase.
Cool, yeah, would you be open to that? I was trying to find them, but I didn't know where to find them here, so that's why I was doing the CPL.
Yeah, I think
Maybe we can have
it's
a fee
a bigger
update.
conversation. I think we'd like to see you come to us at some point and say, yeah, these are the fees we think make some sense to increase. Because, if they haven't been looked at in a number of years, then they probably are too low.
We talked about restaurant inspection fees, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, I mean, we did go over the fee for a certified vital record not that long ago. I would not push to raise that. If you recall, we do have the program, that was one of the first things I did with the reduced or waived fee for vital records. And we are, 4 out of our 6 counties that we touch charge the same thing we do. There's only a couple counties that charge more than we do, a couple that charge, some of the smaller ones charge less, but it would be up to you, but I would say I wouldn't look to change that. What we did with that study, it was Commissioner Spiz who, when I introduced the resolution, or whatever, asked for the resolution to have the fee and reduced waive program, he said, well, maybe we're charging too much for the vital records in the first place. Why don't we look at that? So we had to do a study and figure out how much it actually costs us to produce a vital record. And so, we're not a for-profit by any means, but it does cost money for everything that we do to produce a record. And so I don't know. I've never been a, hey, let's raise fees kind of gal, so you're gonna, I'm in a weird one on that one. But if you wanna raise my marriage fees, I'm fine with that. I think, honestly, when people say $10, it sounds like a joke, so.
It does.
I don't have a problem with increasing that. The other one, I guess that I would not have a problem increasing would be the waiver, the 3-day waiver. So when you apply for a marriage license, you have to wait 3 days. Otherwise, you can pay a $5 waiver fee.
So cheap.
It's very cheap, so.
Actually, more than that to drive out here.
Right.
Yes, so if you apply online, it starts the clock, like that sort of thing, so, but if you wanted to, increase that a bit, I would not have a problem with that at all.
Well, I guess what we look for, you guys tell us what you think you could raise the fees on.
And also to that, waivers for vital records makes a lot of sense, and
Right.
so people that are unable to pay for things, don't make them pay for it, but people that can afford it to go from $10 to $20, have those people pay $20, stuff like that, right? If that's amenable to you, but I think we're all interested as ARPA comes to a close, at least for me. This job's gonna get real boring real quick, cause it's gonna be a bunch of IT stuff and the sheriff getting $200 million more a year, so where are we gonna find
I got some ARPA dollars, I got a fire suppression system.
Well,
Get in that, Sheriff.
if you want a fire suppression system, be like the animal control and find half of it from fees, that's what I'm saying, is we gotta kind of figure it out. So that's
Well,
what I'm
as you
trying to keep
said,
it
I
interesting
mean,
for
my
us.
my division is a donor division, right? We do bring in more revenue than we spend.
Right.
So I mean,
So
you add up
understanding
the
what
10
that-
years that I've been here, go on, you know, in perpetuity before I was here. I've already kind of raised that money for the county to be able to afford that, so.
Right.
I've cut positions, anything that I've ever been asked from fiscal, I have done, you know, I cut positions, I cut my second deputy position. I mean, I've done everything that I've been asked.
Understood.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner?
No.
Okay. We really appreciate you coming in. And you're right, your asks don't seem that enormous compared to some of
fire hats.
other groups
I mean,
we've
we love a
spoken with.
comfort room and stainless steel kitchens and you know, comfort room, workout room, we'd love all that too, but fire suppression would be great, a private break room for deeds would be great, generator would be great. I'm not a fancy gal.
Yeah.
We're just here to do our work.
All right, well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, see you Thursday. Quick recess, like 5 minutes.
I probably won't be, I have a meeting in Lansing, a training.
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Here all day. I love watching different things. I'm like, I'm so jealous of like.
5 minutes.
5 minute break, okay. 5 minutes, they can come get organized.
I wanted to ask you.
You guys can get organized, but about 5 minutes, but you know, then you So the Briggs comes the same time every day.
What?
The Briggs truck, seems like they would come different times every day.
You would think.
Just to make a different, not a pattern.
Alright.
They're the same time every day.
So we have been looking at all of the elected departments today. We are the last one that
Last
we
one.
review, but
Alphabetically, so.
alphabetically,
Yeah,
is that
that's
how
true.
you did it?
Best for
Yeah,
last.
maybe.
Best for last.
Anyway. So, the floor is yours, and then after you've made your presentation, we'll have some questions.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that as always good to see everybody. First of all, you all know me, Jim Nash. Ann Vara is my chief deputy, Steve is my chief manager, and Brian is manager over all the projects we have and all the things that we're doing, and you've met him too. So I just want to kind of go over a couple of things and we'll open it up for questions. That'd be fine. So starting out, we're asking for 14 new positions and actually upgrading 18 to make sure we have a good career path for everybody. We want to make sure that our system is going to be as good as it is now, as long as we can keep it that way. And this is part of what we have to do. We've been expanding, we've been doing a lot more. So this is something that we need to make sure that we're doing all the services we need to do for everybody and make sure they're good. And this will not have any significant effect on the general fund. We really don't use much of the general fund. Only about 1.5–2% of our budget is from the general fund. The rest is from all the systems we operate and maintain. So this is something that won't really affect the budget in any significant way. So this is what we're doing, and we've grown significantly since I've been in this office. One of the most important things was taking over Pontiac, so we had to dramatically increase our staff to do that, and we're doing a really good job bringing them back up to where they need to be, because this is an issue we've had with our more disadvantaged communities in Oakland County, especially Pontiac and Royal Oak Township. Those are the ones we're concentrating on. They have the most issues with affordability and the systems they run, and these are older systems, both in Pontiac, these days, a lot of it dates back to the late 1800s. And Royal Oak Township is, again, very tiny little community, so anything that affects that community has a real impact on the ratepayers. So a lot of what we're doing in these past few years is bringing in federal and state money, and that's really helped so we can do those improvements without nailing their rates to the point where they can't afford them anymore. So that's one of those things that we really concentrate on. We've been getting, in past, last year we got grants, $5 million for lead replacement in Pontiac, which again is gonna really help that community. When they came up with this rule, it was on the backs of the communities to do all this, and that goes right on rates. So whenever we can get outside money for this, it really helps that. We need to get rid of these lead lines, and this is part of how we're doing it. We got almost $13 million in sewer improvements, again, through grants for the city of Pontiac. And again, all their systems, about, I think it was 65% of their underground infrastructure is between 80 and 120 years old, way past their lifetime expectancy. So we're bringing those back up to date. We had to raise rates in Pontiac, but when we get these outside funds, it really helps mitigate that. So that's what we want to make sure we're doing. This year, we're applying for $7.5, almost $8 million in sewer and almost $30 million in water just for Pontiac. And for Royal Oak Township, almost $1 million for sewer and 8.2 for water, 8.2 million for water. Again, their infrastructure is very old, and anytime we can avoid putting money on their rates, it really helps that community. So again, that's what we're doing, and I'll talk about them in a minute too, about affordability. You know, a lot of what we need to do is inform the public. Educating the public is really important. And it's not just the general public. Most people really don't know anything about how these systems operate, what their conditions are, where they are, you know, unless you have a hole forming in your yard or you have one of my trucks pull up to your house. You really don't know where the infrastructure is. So we're out there trying to educate that. We're working on a video and presentation called What We Do, so we can, you know, much better educate the public around this stuff. It's important they understand so they can see what we're doing and support the long-term sustainability that we're working on. So we're working on a couple of pieces of new legislation. For almost 3 years now, we've been working on affordability. I started a regional basically a stakeholder group for Pontiac and Royal Oak Township way back in December of 2020, when we recognized that we're gonna have to start doing shutoffs again, but we wanna do an affordability program so we could really limit how many shutoffs we do. It's the last thing we wanna do is shut off anybody's water, especially for lack of payment, because it's unhealthy for the family, it's unhealthy for people that they deal with. If their kids don't have good sanitation, they can get sick, they can take their stuff to school, it can spread through the community that way. So we wanna make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure these systems are sustainable and can get the funding they need, but we're not hitting the ratepayers, especially the people who can't afford the water. So we've been working with Senator Chang in Detroit and a broad coalition of folks from around the county, the state. And I gotta say, our office has played a major role in that. Sarah Rubino, who is an attorney in my office, has been working on this for a couple of years now. And Kelsey Cook, who has been my attorney and manager, has been leading this effort. And we've been really having a very good effect statewide. We're trying to build a system. This would be the first in the country statewide system for affordability. Every state really has gas and electric sustainability, affordability programs that are long-term funded, and we want to do this for water. It really makes no sense that some utilities get help for affordability and water doesn't. So we want to start a statewide program that has a permanent sustainable funding source, so we're not looking for funding every year, and that is going to be a long-term sustainable program. So we're working with other utilities, activist groups, universities, just a whole wide range of folks to do this. And I think we're going in a very good direction. And so far, we're looking in the next month or so to have that bill introduced. And again, this will be something that would make us the first state to do it. And our Oakland County has played a major role in that. Another one is a stormwater utility bill. I've described this before. Right now, most communities just spend general funds or tax or property tax funding on stormwater, and there's lawsuits going around. There's a law firm that goes around suing communities for how they pay for this. So we want to clarify this legally. I've been working on this for literally 8 years, and we have a legislature now that's actually paying attention, is very interested in doing this. Senator Baer is introducing legislation again in the next month or so. And we've been working again on a broad coalition of groups, including the Michigan Municipal League, to do this. And in my mind, we're heading in a very good direction. What a utility does is it allows a community to charge people for stormwater by how much they produce, by how much impervious surfaces they have on their property. Once that's calculated and we charge them, they have the ability to limit that water leaving their systems, rain gardens, rain barrels, different things that they can do. In a commercial, they can do bioswales in parking lots. Instead of a hump in the parking lot, it's a dip in the parking lot. So water can get in there and infiltrate before it gets to the storm drains. So it offers a fairer way of charging for what we do for stormwater and the ability to mitigate that. So you might not have to pay, or you can pay a reduced amount or none at all if you can limit how much water gets off your lawn. So again, this bill is being introduced in the next month or so, and we feel good that it's going to pass this time. It really is the way we need to pay for this and to encourage people to do what they can on their properties to retain the water. So again, this is something we want to do to prevent pollution, prevent future flooding in large storms. And I think this is something that the legislature is really paying attention to, and I think we can get it passed this year. So I feel good about that. Just recently, we gave a tour of the Clinton River Resource Recovery Facility to Senator Jeremy Moss and the main aide for Representative in Pontiac, Brenda Carter. So we gave him a tour of the place, talked about the really new technologies we're using there. We are now extracting much more methane, natural gas from our solids in the system. This is all airtight, so none of it leaks. It's allowing us to use this methane that we're taking from the solids. We're already using some of it to run the systems, the boilers that allow this to work. And we're looking to do as much as we can. We're hoping to look at some future projects where we might be able to pull enough methane out of this to run a a big chunk of that facility directly from what we treat rather than the fossil fuels that's traditionally used for this. This is how we can get our systems much more sustainable in the long run. So we talked to them, they're very interested, they're working on these very kind of things, sustainable energy sources. And Jeremy Moss suggested that we might be able to work with them to get some grants to be able to do this in a larger scale. So we're working that in the long term. I think this is something we really need to be working on. I've said it before that my industry uses about 4% of all the electric energy used in the country to move and treat water. And I'm thinking in the coming years, we can end up, instead of using that much, we can produce that much sustainably and renewably. So I think that's the kind of thing that we'll be doing for a long time. And we'd really we're gonna be working with your administrators to have you guys come tour the place too. We'd really like you to do that, see the things we're working on and the potential for the future. So we're gonna be inviting you to do that in the near future, and we hope you guys can come see it, because it's important work we're doing, and we're leading the state and the country in how we're doing this in Oakland County. So I'm really proud of that. And that's pretty much it for me. Any questions you guys we're happy to entertain.
Excellent, okay. Well, I will say it rained all night last night.
It certainly did.
And those of you who know me know that I've ripped out half my yard, turned it into a big rain garden. So I was standing there this morning looking down on this garden where I used to have probably 30 square feet of a puddle that wouldn't disappear for hours. There's no water there. It's just all the plants. And in my neighbor's yard, there's a big puddle where they always had one form, and I just stood there thinking, this is working just the way it's supposed to, you know? So, yeah. And we did tour the Great Lakes Water Authority last week. Commissioner Rahman arranged that for us with them, and that was very interesting. So, yeah, I'm sure there are many of us who would like to come through.
Well, we're much smaller scale than that, I can tell you that. But, we're doing some.
We had to drive between.
Yeah, right. We're doing some, real new technologies that I think they'll be adopting over time. You know, I've said it before that I think the kind of things we're doing, every system will be doing in 10 or 20 years, because it's just efficient and there's an investment, but the payback is massive. So I think it's something that we'll be doing, and I think Oakland County has been taking a lead in that.
Good. Agreed, thank you. All right, let's see who signed up. We'll start with Commissioner Smith Charles. She's got this, she's hanging her name in. She's good, she's got that down.
Just put it in there as a placeholder if I have a question, it's there. One that is about, I have two questions. One is in terms of the $25,000 for memberships, what professional associations are you a member of, or what was it used for?
Well, we're a member of the Michigan Environmental, what is it? Well, I'll let Steve kind of.
Yeah, there's the top ones that our staff, our professional staff are members of. The American Society of Civil Engineers is one. The Water Environment Federation, which is an international conglomerate of water and sewer experts. The other one is the local one, Michigan Water Environment Association. It kind of rolls up into the federation, the national federation, but it's at a local level. Then the other one a lot of folks are involved in is the American Water Works Association. Matter of fact, we have a person on our staff, Carrie Cox. She's actually a member of the national board. She's actually receiving an award in Philadelphia for her years of service on that board. She just stepped down. So we're really involved in on a national scale. We go to the conferences and bring back the technology literally to Pontiac. That was where we touch base with a lot of those folks, the innovators that we see what we can take advantage of here in Oakland County.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And then just a follow-up, I see you have Ann with you today, and I remember bugging her earlier this year because a resident reached out to me, and I just wanted to double check. So, of course, I closed the email that quickly. It was regarding the rain barrels, the pilot where we would offer rebates to homeowners who install rain barrels, native trees, rain gardens, planters, much to your liking, I'm sure. And we kind of alluded that this program might get up and running midsummer, late summer. So they did reach out again, cause folks put it on their calendar and then hit you back up. Where we kind of stand with that, in terms of with the local leadership and how to best address this need here in the community.
Yes, so it's rolling, the program's rolling. We have a lot of legwork to do to get it launched. There's funding for it through the Chapter 20 board. Commissioner Markham was part of that, so thank you for that. We're reaching out to each community that has offered to be a pilot community. I think, let's see, we've got Royal Oak, Oak Park, Birmingham, and Southfield?
I believe so.
Is the fourth community? And so Jim's doing some road show on that, and he's bringing along our chief engineer, Lynn Seymour, and her team to talk about that. So we're getting it up and running, and we're happy to kind of bring back a report on that for you if you'd like, especially if it affects your particular community. I think it'd be good for us to keep in touch with you. I think Lynn Seymour did reach out to you with an email, kind of talking a little bit about it where we were a few months ago.
Yeah.
So we expect, I mean, it's going to be ongoing throughout the year and into next year as well.
Okay.
It includes, you're right, rain barrels, trees, and rain gardens.
Yes. So I'm glad to hear Oak Park, I'm glad to hear Southfield. I'm sure other commissioners probably wanna know where their communities stand. And then just with everybody, like if you're doing something in our districts, please, please, please,
of course,
get us the word. We'd love to be your ambassador, because oftentimes we hear about it kind of late.
Yeah.
And then we're not able to be as helpful.
And I did mention the pilot. Our idea is to take this throughout the whole GWK and then beyond into the rest of Oakland County. And then include parts of the region too. SEMCOG is a partner on this, as well as the Clinton River Watershed Council, Friends of the Rouge.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And the watershed councils will be doing some of the technical work. They'll be helping them develop what they think is the best process for doing something green on their properties and helping them do the planting and all that stuff. So
The volunteer outreach and actually some of the physical plantings.
this will be a very, very educational part of that too, because people, when they find out about this, and I always say it's just a bunch of little gardens all over, and who doesn't like that? It's a good placemaking kind of thing, so people recognize that there's good stewardship going on, and it's just attractive, very aesthetic. So I like the idea of this, and I think it's something that can really go, and when we're educating people, there's always a follow-up. And we do a thing, educational thing for people who live on riparian land, on a lake or a river, to put in bioswales, which is that same kind of green infrastructure that stops for the fertilizer from getting into the lake or stream, which causes algae and can cause beach closures and all that stuff. So whether it's urban or more in suburban or rural where there's lakes, there's all different applications to this, and more communities are recognizing that and getting involved. So the communities of the GWK are very interested in this and want to be part of that. So it's one of those things that is very collaborative, and people are really being much more interested in it.
Thank you both.
Okay, next up we have Commissioner Rahman, followed by Commissioner Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all the great work you're continuing to do. It's great to see you as always. Brian, I'm glad you're back. I thought we scared you off after the last couple of meetings, so I'm definitely glad you're back here with us. Just to piggyback off Commissioner Smith-Charles, that pilot program, are there ways for other communities to potentially still get involved at this stage, or is the pilot phase of it done and we're just waiting for the full rollout throughout the county, or?
I don't know that this phase would be a good time for other communities to jump on.
in? Okay.
We wanna roll this out as a pilot to see how we go with the funding and see what the interest is.
Got it.
And how the collaboration and coordination is gonna be not only with the communities, but with the watershed councils as well. So it's a little bit of a heavy lift getting it off the ground. That's why we did have the pilot communities start out, but if there's interest from particular community members, please reach out and we're not gonna say no.
Sure. If you could send us information too, because like I said, I do vaguely remember this, but I didn't know much about where this program currently stands, so I'd certainly appreciate that.
So this is a pilot that's funded through the GWK, so it's only the communities that are part of that in the initial pilot. And as Ann said, I think this would be a great way of demonstrating the effectiveness of it, and even in systems that we might not directly be involved, some of these communities might take that on their own and
Sure.
start that kind of program for themselves. So I think it's a great example.
GWK stands for?
George W. Kuhn, that's the 12 Towns Drain, basically from the very eastern part of Southfield up through Troy, Birmingham, and then all the way over to the county line. That's the section that is served by the 12 Towns Drain.
And they had big flooding problems in 2014.
2014, we had 18,000 homes that flooded, so it was a huge issue.
All right, so after all that, I just have my two questions. They're both fairly quick. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, I just want to add one thing too. What spurred some of this is we, about 3 or 4 years ago, we got a grant from SEMCOG to start a code audit program where we helped audit the codes, zoning codes within the GWK communities to sort of lift the barriers to green infrastructure and help those communities rearrange their codes or add new language that would do that. So that's how this sort of started. That was the initiation, and then it just has grown from there.
Got it.
If that helps.
Thank you. Yep. So my questions are, first one is, it sounds like of your entire budget, Commissioner Nash, you mentioned always like 1 to 2% is coming from the general fund. So it's largely an enterprise situation. It sounds like you're self-sustaining, which is awesome. It means less work for us, I think, generally. Is there anything in particular you need from us as a board or anything you're looking for us to do as far as a specific ask or something that you feel you're lacking at this point?
You guys have been so helpful in all these things, so we'd like to have that communication, and you're absolutely right, and Commissioner Smith-Charles was true. We need to communicate as much as we can on all these things, so you guys know where we're coming from, what we're doing, and how when we step away, when we're doing more of this, how you can help your own communities do this, because all the communities are looking at this one way or another. They all recognize that there's issues that they have to make sure they're addressing with climate change being much more large storms coming. Everybody recognizes we gotta be more resilient to that, and we have to build our systems so that less goes into the stormwater drains and stays on the surface so it can absorb. So we have less pollution going into our lakes, rivers, and streams, and we reduce the possibility of major flooding in a big storm. So as we do that, I think it's really incumbent on all of us, whether it's my office or the board, to understand and help do that. So we want to make sure that you guys are getting what you need, information you need, and that we can work together on all this. I mean, that's the most important thing we can do right now.
Sounds good. And then the other one is personnel. It looks like it's gone from 380s from 2020 and 2021, 2022 up to 440s now. So I just want to clarify on that jump. And then what is the financial impact of that jump as well?
I believe there's a typo in the supplementary information that was provided. Remember, we looked at that today, and we were only adding 14 in this current. I think there's
14 new.
14 new. I think there's a typo on the previous year.
Oh, got it. Okay. So what are we allocating then for 24? How many employees are we looking at, or?
I think the number is correct, but somehow the jump number in the graph, if you're looking at that one chart that shows the big jump, I think there might be a typo in that graph.
Okay.
So you're saying how many employees would we have?
So the total number is correct.
Well, so the total number, at least that I'm saying, again, I could be wrong. This is just the information I have here in front of me, is 441 is what's anticipated for fiscal year 24. Is that correct?
That's what we see as well.
And we're coming up from the 390s this year.
That's where I think there might be a typo, because we're only coming up 14.
I see.
14 new. We're doing another 18, we're upgrading the existing positions.
It shows in that graph, fiscal year 23 is 397, and then 24 is 441. That 397 is incorrect.
I see. Okay. And so then, given all of that, is there a significant impact to the budget for those 14 extra employees?
Right at 9 stuff.
Because I'm trying to figure and I was a little bit confused only because, again, it doesn't show on our line items.
Because they're not general fund.
Exactly, that's my point. Because
Right.
they're not general fund, is there anything that we as a board should be aware of for those 14 extra people in terms of salary and everything that's fringes and things that are baked into those 14 people?
It's negligible. in the grand scheme of things that, we collect our money back from the communities that we serve.
Right.
And we pass through a lot of funds that go back to GLWA.
Okay.
Right, because Great Lakes Water Authority, whether it's drinking water or actually treatment of our waste, is about 80 or more % of every community's budget. So ours is a much smaller share of that, and then of course they all have all their own capital that they do. We do operation and maintenance for 17 communities. So, but in terms of how much we affect each community by what our office charges is very small compared to what the actual utilities pay.
Okay. And it's just different for me being an enterprise fund. It's I think different than the other departments I've seen so far. So for me, I'm just trying to understand kind of how the interplay works.
Right. Well, like we said with this green infrastructure grant, refunds. It's within that system, so you can't do that outside that system, only within each system. Other systems could do it, communities could do it themselves, but we can't take money from one and put it to another. That's what you mean. Yeah, I got you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's see who's next. Next, we have Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner Powell.
So my question goes, piggybacked right into Dr. Raymond's there. The 14 positions you're asking for, those are already budgeted for in this budget?
That's what, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's my only question. I said you let a perfect segue for me.
I have two questions. One is, remember we were getting those emails from in regards to the Macomb drain and all that stuff? How is that going? You may have spoke on it, but I was out. How is that going? And I heard that it could cost a lot of money for us to get control of that situation. I know our waste that's going into that waterway is under the alerted amount that is allowed for us, but do we have any plans or anything to fix that future-wise?
Macomb County has been making a lot of claims against us for many years. And as the Eagle will tell you, all our systems are well within permit.
Okay.
One of the things that really kind of bothers me is they say that, a combined sewer system is polluting their systems. Our GWK is basically the same requirements as any wastewater treatment plant in terms of what our permits allows us to send out into the world. So if we're polluting, then the actual wastewater treatment plants are polluting a lot more because they're not diluted with stormwater. So logically, it doesn't make sense. Our permit is very strict, and we've never had a violation. One of the reporters that was reporting on the claims that we have all these violations at our plant, they went to Eagle and they reported in their story that Eagle told them that we never had a violation that they're aware of. And so you can make all kinds of claims. If it's not backed up with any kind of fact, it's kind of meaningless. We are working with Macomb County. They're getting a study done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, kind of looking at the whole region there, and they're going to find in our minds the same thing everybody else is finding, is that we're not polluting Lake St. Clair. First of all, 97% of the water that comes into Lake St. Clair comes from the St. Clair River, which is known to be a source of significant pollution. 3% of all the water that goes into Lake St. Clair comes from the watershed itself. And our facility is about 1/100th of 1% of the flow of the. So what we put into that lake is such a tiny, tiny minority of what goes into that lake. We couldn't possibly have any significant impact on pollution. And if it was, there would be pollution all down that drain to the lake. And there's never been found any significant amount of pollution that's come from our facility. A lot comes from the drains in Macomb County. But from our facility, we have an extremely good record of what we put out, and it's never really been. We've never really had any significant violation from the state. So we do great work. My folks do really amazing work. When a big storm comes through, they can be there 48, 72 hours working on that, cleaning everything up. And they put their hearts and souls in that, and it's kind of an insult to what they do when Macomb comes up with these things that are just not true. So I wanna stress that my office does really good work, we're always within our permit, and we're not polluting, we're just not.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that statement on record from our wonderful commissioner, because we know we were receiving those emails and I didn't like them. And I was happy to see the rebuttal, but now that we in budget season, I just thought we'd hear from the horse's mouth, okay? All right, we
Well,
got that
thank you,
on record.
Commissioner, I appreciate that.
Thank you. My second question is, I just wanted to know, and it could be offline, and if you want me to just contact you, that's fine. How did the water assistance, because I know y'all referenced it, but how did that program go in helping the different communities that we were working to assist in that? How is that going?
Well, we're starting the process. United Way is now running the program that gets the water affordability, people signed up to it, and it's dramatically improved. So I can't give you the numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
I could definitely get them to you.
Okay.
But it's been a significant improvement. We were struggling to get people signed up, and they've really done a great job. And they do a lot of work with other qualified people. And so they're, part of that is referring them to us. And we're just one of those things that people have a hard time affording. It's not just water. So if we can help us and with their electric bills and all the other things that they can help with, that's gonna help everybody much better. And so we're happy to work with them.
So what I wanna do also is commend our staff, your staff, thank you. They did go into communities. They did work at some of the agencies, partner with them, sat at some of the locations, be it if it was our staff or United Way, but they did. Water Resource did a different thing, and they did partner with United Way to go in the communities, and that's how we were able to do a more referral back in getting people to know about these programs. So just tell your staff thank you, tell United Way thank you, and because I was keeping up, so I just wanted to get that on record too, so thank you so much.
We did a couple of town halls, and we're planning on a couple more coming up in the near future, just to educate folks. We want people to know this stuff is there. Part of what we're doing when we're, traditionally, we sent out shut-off notices if they didn't get to, if they hadn't paid for a certain amount of time. But nowadays, we're putting out not just a notice, but we're saying, look, there's all these resources you can apply for. We're giving them the information to contact them. We're actually going to these groups and saying, look, we have numbers for people to be called. So we're doing as much as we can to make sure they understand that there's resources available, and the resources are getting better at reaching the folks that they need. So that's what we want to do in the long term.
Thank you. Yield my question.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we have Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks. Angie, good setup, because I was also gonna say that part of the ARPA 2.0 conversations have included $500K to match the United Way's contribution to starting that hardship assistance program. But I think
That's the one
also-
thing that I had forgotten to mention. Now, our hardship program, I think, is really important because it helps people who don't qualify under the much more stringent ARPA program or the other things. But people have accidents, people have illnesses, people have fires in their home, and there's lots of reasons why people might have a short-term issue. And previously, when they had a short-term issue, they'd be accumulating in old bills. This way, we can, at least for a few months, help them so they won't start that accumulation. The better we can start people on a program before they owe a bunch of money, the better off the whole system is. And that's what we want to make sure. They get that help right away instead of having to wait till they have a big problem.
And hopefully, right? And hopefully, I think someone from your team has also talked to Community Foundation about also matching what the county puts in.
We're
So
looking
that
for
would-
everywhere we can get any kind of funding, and there's a lot of resources. So we're helpful. If you can help us at all, we'd love to get it, so.
Great. Also, there was a thing, and this might be too much inside baseball for you all unless you know this term when I say it, but when we were talking in the committee a couple months ago, someone came as part of the deficit elimination plan you have to write when you balance the books or whatever, and it included a revolving loan fund focused on water. And I had never heard of that, and I asked some folks about it and other folks, and they said they think it's a water thing, they think it was from 2011, but it's a revolving loan fund, and they said they think it's $300,000. Do you know what this is?
Yeah, that's a project from years ago. I believe it was a loan from the Army's revolving fund to construct a dam on Bush Lake.
Yeah.
And so there's been a deficit in that fund for whatever reason, that's a whole other topic of discussion, but I think while we're going through the process to eliminate the deficit, that's why we reported out to the state. I don't think it involved water systems. That, I've never heard of a loan for water systems, but for Bush Lake or Lake Improvement Board, or even a drain, there's a loan for one of our drains. That's not deficit, that's probably why I don't hear about it. So on occasion, we do projects, we will come to the board and ask for a loan from the revolving fund. They're very few and far between, but I think that might be what you're referring to. The 300,000 matches up to Bush Lake from the revolving fund, and it wasn't on the deficit elimination plan because there's still some money owed to clean that up.
Is this the state water revolving fund or
Those
what
are
revolving?
counties.
Where do we find, where's the county revolving fund? That sounds awesome.
So there's a resolution that the county revolving fund can fund small projects. I think the resolution says on the order of $150,000 to communities, but they're special assessment projects. Get you more information, but they're very small scale projects, and there has to be a special assessment district set up, and you have to pay them back over 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I think there's a max. There's a resolution that on occasion, would pursue for certain projects, unique projects, as a alternative method of financing rather than selling a bond. It's so small, so that's probably what you.
How much is in that pot of money, do you know?
That I would refer to fiscal about the balances in the various revolving funds, but
Yeah,
there's a resolution that's been around for a while that.
if you could share that, that'd be helpful, cause it's not then just exclusive to water, right? It's special assessments of all kinds?
Yeah, I'd have to actually look at the resolution per se. I just remember small type projects that can be paid back through special assessments.
Yeah.
It's a maximum of 150. This one was a little bit more, but we asked for
Okay.
a little change when we came back 10, 12 years ago now. But I can find that resolution, I'm sure it's some of my old files, I was involved in that project back then.
Okay, thank you, that'd be helpful. Yeah.
So this allows us to help communities do these things
On these
without-
small scale things, we
without
can step in.
Loans of their own.
Correct.
Right.
It's a
Okay.
financing mechanism that's available.
Could some of that be used for like lead water line replacement or lead line replacement and all that?
Sure.
Well, if you look
I
at
know it's
that, or you look at more
bigger.
traditional ways to finance projects by selling bonds with the state revolving fund, you'd have to compare, interest rates and the ease of actually
Sure.
executing that type of financing. That might be very cumbersome
Yeah.
to the board for something like that. Especially when we have, 8 million waiting to hear back from if we get a big grant from the state, we
Right.
take care of those problems on a bigger scale.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Charlie, just briefly, it's a loan, so it has to have have an income or assessment source to pay back.
Right.
So in a water line, I don't know if that'd be there.
Well, if it was a special assessment and all that, maybe there's something. I hear you though, Phil, thank you. And then, I don't know what the water and sewage trust fund is, but it's $10 million. Can you help? I mean, if I'm the only one, we can do this later, but.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to, we can take a look. So that particular line item you're referring to is a reimbursement line item. There's a line item just above it called, it's like an overhead or administration line item, and it's a positive $4 million. So that particular fund is actually reimbursed out of its own line item. And there are other funds that are also reimbursed out of that line item for our drain maintenance work, for our sewage disposal systems. So it's basically a line item used to reimburse out for allocations across the board for a lot of programs. We have safety programs, our work order program. So it's more of a mechanism. It's not technically in a deficit. It's used, that line item's used to allocate money out of it that's collected in that fund.
And where does that money come from? I mean, and to be so big.
It comes from the user fees that we charge for customers.
Water and sewer.
For water and sewer.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thanks. And then my last question was just because you were mentioning, Commissioner Nash, all these investments you'd want to make to then generate revenue. I mean, what's the 30,000 foot view of what that looks like? Is it, a huge bond or something to build a cool dam to make the water, you know,
No,
what's it look like?
Right now, we're working in Pontiac at the Clinton River Water Resource Recovery Facility. There's a bunch of different things we need to do. We need to bring up the quality of a bunch of electronic stuff that needs to be replaced. It's been a long time. There's some issues with the floodplain that we have to make sure all our stuff is off that. We're doing some of the other projects we're doing there.
Yeah, I think the key, we will make sure that whatever day we schedule the tour, that you say you're available.
Oh,
We can give the previous tour that you hosted, we gave a layman's description of not only what we're doing, but what does the future hold, and how could our little plant in our own backyard really take advantage of this technology. But the project that's immediately coming up that we just received bids for through the drainage district, we're doing the electrical system improvements. It's 30-40+ million dollar type projects. We're chasing grants for that type of stuff. So we're trying to bring this facility from 100 years, technology up to state of the art. And so we're doing it project by project at a time. But as we do these, we're preparing for this new technology to really get that sustainability element out of that plant. So we're trying to plan ahead for the recovery of the energy that Europe does a lot of this already. And we're trying to bring that technology here, like I said, in our own backyard. So
The newest part of that, of the Clinton River Watershed Recovery Facility, Clinton River Water Recovery Facility is the THP, thermal hydrolysis process that we added back. We actually opened it up in the fall of 2020. That takes those solids and basically pressure cooks them to break down the cell walls so they can be processed and pull the methane out of them much quicker. Instead of 21 days, it's 4 or 5 days. So that was that first step, the first in the state, third in the country to do that. There's other steps that we're looking to do, and that's what we're trying to get some grants from the state for. As I mentioned, Senator Moss said that they're looking specifically at how we can do more renewable energy projects. There's nothing more renewable than sewage. So we're gonna be using that sewage that otherwise goes into a landfill, producing methane that just goes out in the atmosphere. Now we're catching it, we're using it instead of letting it get out. We're looking at a new process that would go even further. There's actually a bacteria that comes out of Russia that can only survive at 200 degrees or higher. But it's really good at eating anything. And in fact, one of the big things they said over the years was, we make fuel out of corn, but we can't make it out of corn stalks. This stuff will eat corn stalks. This stuff will eat paper, it'll eat cardboard, it'll eat anything. And there's potential that we could use this to even way more efficiently eat those solids and turn them into methane. So we'll put way less as waste. We'll get way more energy out of it, and all of it's won't leak, and it's basically forever because we'll always be producing this stuff. So the long run, I think there's more we can do. We're gonna be looking for those grants. We can't do it because it would hit the ratepayers. Steve mentioned the electronic stuff. We got an $11 million grant from the state police that is meant to stop problems just like that. So that's gonna be going towards that project, which is, again, it saves the communities a bunch of money. And I think I've spoken this before. The federal dollars, 40% are supposed to go to underserved communities. The way the state has set things up, Pontiac, since it is part of a larger system, can't get that 100% forgiveness. We're trying to get them to change their minds. We've talked to the state, to the governor's office and the legislature. They've both been very positive about that we should get 100% forgiveness for the communities that really can't afford it. 10% for the other ones who can, but they also already getting, now Pontiac's only getting 10% rebate, we should get 100%. So we're working on that. I wanna make sure that that's done because we can save those people money and still improve their systems. We don't wanna improve their system if it's gonna make it impossible for them to afford the water. That's just the biggest thing we gotta make sure we don't do.
Can you give us some context for that? And then I'm done with questions, but can you give us some context for that? Because I think y'all three mentioned that to me when you were talking about you got a state revolving fund grant of $3.8 million for $38 million for the Pontiac treatment plant.
That's for the whole
And-
system, so the communities that
but
are
then-
more affluent will get that 10% and Pontiac.
Well, I mean,
I
starting
believe-
at zero, cause I don't know if we all know what you're saying, cause they said it real simple for me.
Yeah, so the way that it works is if it was just Pontiac that the plant served, then it would be 100% principal forgiveness.
So $38 million,
Would have been forgiven.
$0 to the ratepayers.
Correct. But however, we met one of the state's goals to regionalize, and by regionalizing, we changed the net average income of the district to the point where Pontiac is less of an underserved community, and the district at large makes too much money, and so Pontiac suffers.
Because it includes Sylvan Lake and Kego Harbor and something else.
Correct.
So you missed it by like $89 or something, you
Yeah,
guys said.
it was
Yeah.
close, and it was just a shame in my mind. So we're working on that, trying to make that happen. To me, it's vitally important. That city needs an improvement, and if we do it all on their backs, they're gonna be in trouble. So
So the thing that I remember them telling me is the $38 million in improvements for the Pontiac or Clinton River, whatever, sewage plant. I know you don't like that, water treatment.
water resource recovery facility.
Water resource recovery.
Yeah.
So the $38 million bill for improving the water resource recovery facility in Pontiac would have been eligible for getting $38 million reimbursed. But instead, because there's like 5 more people in the district that make $200,000 a year when they redid the district lines however many years ago, they only got $3.8 million as a forgivable loan. So $35 million has to go to the ratepayers. But that's 20,000 Pontiac households and then like 10,000 non-Pontiac households. And, you know, if you add the formula up, it's, you know,
Right.
40.1% are in poverty instead of 39.9, which is the formula or whatever.
You can't cut them 42%.
Well, that's what he's saying, that's what he's
That's what we're
saying.
trying to do. We're working with the
He's trying to ask the
state on it.
governor for a favor, yeah.
Trying to change the rules.
Yeah.
The governor's environmental justice coordinator really understands it. Again, Senator Moss, we had a long conversation with him. He gets it. He's working on it. He says he's already trying to look at it legislatively. So I think it would be the best. And we do save, everybody saves money when we do things in a larger group. We just gotta make sure that the poorer communities aren't left out. And that's just vital.
Do you guys talk for the Justice 40 stuff and IRA and BIL, do you talk to the DOE or is that not a thing? Like the Federal Department of Energy would, who's the best person you all talk to?
Pretty local, because a lot of the federal money comes through the state programs.
Virtually
Okay.
all the money that came through the infrastructure bill and the COVID bill, those all came through the states. And, you know, it took the
Same
legislature like
formula.
a year and a half for that first one to be finally sent, but they've been much more responsive now. So I think we're in a good place right there, and we're looking to, this funding should be in the next 3 or 4 years at least. So we're looking to make sure it's spent right.
Okay, thank you.
Crazy. Is that it, Commissioner? Okay, Commissioner Whitewood.
The generating the waste you talk about, it's most renewable or whatever, you know, you'll be drinking that later, right? But selling the fertilizer, right? Are we doing that or?
So part of what we're
Giving
doing,
it? I mean,
this
right?
process that we got dries out the fertilizer way better than it used to be. So it's a Class A soil supplement. I don't think it's actually gotten the fertilizer recognition.
I mean, we're like, we're
Milorganite.
Milorganite.
Basically, that's a
Like the-
branded name of the
Right,
same
from a
thing.
place from Wisconsin or Minnesota, that's the biggest place, right? So-
Right, it's sewer solids that have been treated to the point, you know, it used to be a lot of our sewer solids were Class B, which means they were toxic. You couldn't touch them, if you put them on a field, you had to wait a certain amount of time to do anything. This is basically fertilizer. I mean, it's chunky, a little wetter than most fertilizer you get in the store, but it really looks like fertilizer. And I've actually used it. I built a couple of rain gardens in my house that I used it in part of the soil amendment. So to me, this is something, the weight of what we have to dispose of is a fraction of what it used to be. My manager in charge of that mentioned that it used to be about $1.4 million a year just to dispose every year from that plant. We've shrunk it to about less than $700,000 a year, less than half, and we're gonna be progressing more from there. So I think we'll dramatically be reducing the amount that we produce, and the costs of disposing of it are dramatically dropping. So that's, again, everything we do translates to savings to the communities we're serving with this. all of this helps save money and the climate.
Are you distributing it to the public, or are we gonna?
We're exporting it to Canada. We found a buyer who actually, we're paying them to haul it at half the price of what we were to the landfill, but it's all going to a firm in Canada that's producing fertilizer out of it.
There's a savings, you're saving.
Right,
what
we're
you-
saving all that money, we don't have to process it anymore, so they're just taking it right from us.
Thank you.
Is there any way in the future to kind of have a closed loop system within the county where all this fertilizer goes to the parks and?
I think that's quite a possibility. I mean, we could take it to parks, they could use it for landscaping, FM&O can use it for their landscaping, there's lots of potential uses for it. Right, this is a good deal for us right now, so it financially, it's really helping that system and all the communities that it serves, so it's whatever best serves the people, that's what we're gonna go for.
I like that. Commissioner Hoffman?
I have another question that made me think about it. Doesn't the Detroit Zoo do something with their manure?
They got an anaerobic digester before the pandemic, just before that, they gave me a tour of the place, and so they do anaerobic digestion, which is what we do at the plant that our system has improved. It basically lets bugs eat it without oxygen, and that's what it produces methane, and it way shrinks how much they have to dispose of.
Okay, but then they use the methane, don't they?
I believe they do, pretty sure they do, yeah.
Zoo poo.
Some kind of energy, what?
Zoo poo.
They have little buckets they sell $5 for zoo poo, they call it, and it's funny, but yeah, they harvest the methane off it and they have much less to dispose of.
And the
so.
methane can be used to generate electricity.
That's what I was asking about.
yeah.
And they're doing that, right?
Yes.
Weren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
What we produce is a little dirty, it's got a little other stuff in it. There's one of those processes that would clean it up. That's one of the things we're looking for grants for in the long term. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we can do, absolutely.
I have a little bit of horse manure.
I'm sure you do.
We know
And
that,
then you have a
Bob.
farm.
We know that, Bob, yeah. That was better. I said, we know that, but hers is better.
Whose is better?
Gwen's roast was better than mine.
All right, anybody else have any questions for these folks?
I was just gonna ask quickly, that Russian super digester you were talking about, could you just send me, I'd just love to read about it, I love learning about
We
this
actually
stuff.
did a pilot program for that, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago now, right? Where they came and they put a little mobile home up there and pulled some of our stuff off it and processed it that way, and it was a huge success. And actually, when some of my folks mentioned it to at one of these conferences we go to, some folks from Denmark said, hey, we'll pay for you to come and look at our stuff, and they
No shit.
4 of you guys went? Four of them went to Denmark and they toured a bunch of little processing plants and all on their dime because they're showing off what they're doing.
Yeah.
My manager pointed out that their costs are way higher than they are in America, so they were much more likely to get a benefit from it than we are. But in the long run, this is the kind of things we need to do to be sustainable. We need to be doing this stuff,
True.
and I think it's the long term.
We'll send you the white
Yeah,
paper.
yeah, I just love to read about it, just, it's fascinating. So,
Send me one
thank you.
too.
We'll send it.
Send it to Patty and have her.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I visited a plant in Germany, same thing. And they actually were processing corn silage, you know, the leftover corn. So they had to deal with all the local farmers that they could bring their corn silage at the end of the season, dump it at the plant. The plant just processed it all winter long, and in the spring, the same trucks came back and they loaded them up with fertilizer and off they went. So for this whole, and they powered, from the methane, they powered all of the public buildings in this little village, which was the school, the township building, you know, like 4 or 5 public buildings were all powered on the methane that they were generating, and it was 7 miles away from the plant. It was an amazing, and it was a little town. This was not, you know, Detroit or even Pontiac. This was a little community of, you know, 20,000 people, and yet they had
I think it's the future.
and they had a field right next to it where they were growing sunflowers that were under study because they're trying to grow sunflowers that grow faster, so that they can just grow more and more and then process them through the plant. So
I remember years ago, Tom McMillan came to one of our board meetings, and one of our, drain meetings, and was talking about, he had just got back, I think it was from Holland, and just all the different things, a lot of that, what you're talking about, I mean, that was some years ago now, so
Oh, yeah, it's very well
we're
established.
catching up, but I
over
think
there.
we're gonna be, this'll be the standard in 10 years, it'll just be the standard.
Well, I'm glad you guys are leading. Okay, anybody else? Any more questions? Well, thank you, Water Resources, for coming
Thank you,
today.
guys.
We really
Anytime, we're always here, let us know if you ever have questions, we'd be happy to talk to you. We'll reach out about that tour.
Cleva gave us fresh water to drink the other day.
Oh my
I
God.
didn't see any water.
Now we need a takeaway.
You'll be drinking this later.
Thank you so much.
No, I don't wanna
Thank
think
you,
about it.
folks.
Oh, okay.
Love that we
Thank
didn't
you.
meet, know.
Okay, so next up, we have public comment. Is anybody here for public comment? Seeing no one, I'll close public comment. Is there any other business for this group? Seeing none, I call this meeting adjourned at 4:31. Thanks, everybody, for coming. See you tomorrow.
Hallelujah.